Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 29th of April. Today, what are they playing at? As hospitals cry out over patient safety, the union that organised the nurses' strike now scrambles to provide their own cover. Now, you might have thought the COVID nightmare was over, but think again. Academics urge the return of masks, more vaccines, and yes, there's a new variant.
Can we jab away the flab? As another controversial weight loss injection is set to be approved for use in the UK, we debate the battle of the bulge. Move over vinyl revival. We're in the era of the cassette comeback. We'll be looking at the hype behind the latest trend in music.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
You know, we were laughing at the front of the Star yesterday because it was all about gremlins and things being
Your
found in
favourite
Mexico.
Story. Yes.
And, well, it gets even more ridiculous today because the front of the Star claims, it's quoting people, obviously, they haven't made it up, but apparently women are better at barbecues than men as we prepare for a nice couple of weeks of decent weather. It claims
Controversial.
50% of women think they're better at a barbecue than men. There you go. The final humiliation for mankind. So what I want to know from you this morning, in your family, who's better at doing the barbecue? Who wants... Why would... If women moan about being relied on a bit too much to do the cooking and things, which I know doesn't happen everywhere, but it's been a common complaint over the decades. Why would you moan? Why would you want to do the barbecue? Let the men do it.
Right, so from what I've seen, the women organise everything at a barbecue. So they do all of the side dishes. They do your salads, your potato salads, your pastas.
Who wants any of that?
Your breads,
Nobody wants
the essential
that.
items. The man stands there and literally does the flipping. That's it. Everything else is done. The woman goes to the shop, she does the side, lays everything out.
You only want the burgers and the buns.
They just do the flipping. So I think that's what they're talking about. Women do the barbecue, the men do the flipping.
All right, so you know what we want to hear from you today. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Who does the best barbecue? Who puts the work in and who gets the best results from a barbecue?
Is it an even split?
I mean, do women know how low you need the coals to go before you start cooking? I don't know.
There is something very caveman about it, isn't it?
It is caveman.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that why men like it? It's like an open flame and
yeah,
they love cooking over it. It's the only time men actually do seem to like cooking, I think.
Well, true, so why knock it?
Yeah. Why, are you a good barbecuer?
No, I don't do any barbecuing, to be fair. No, I don't.
Neither do I.
No. Well, that's good.
But I can do a good potato salad. So we're sticking very much to our gender roles. Well,
Speak for yourself.
yeah, I'm about to say,
But no,
you're with me.
who wants to eat a potato salad?
You need a potato salad at a barbecue. What's a barbecue without a potato salad?
Nice. Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And before we move along to our top story, very important that Stephen, he loved the Goblins yesterday. There is a keep out and cut guide from the Goblins that we talked about yesterday. You'll be glad to know. A little souvenir edition.
What, in case you're living next to one?
Well, in case you want to remember them.
Working next to one.
He's so nasty to me. I do look like a goblin before I go into hair and makeup. That must be said.
It's transformation. It is transformation.
It's a miracle every morning.
It is.
Anyway, do keep your views, your news, your greetings coming into us, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, the union behind the nurses' strike is working with health leaders to provide staff during its own walkout.
Yeah, now this is after hospitals, including Great Ormond Street, the Children's Hospital, issued warnings over patient safety.
The strike, which will start tomorrow evening at 8 p.m, was cut in half from 2 days to 1 after the High Court ruled the walkout broke ballot rules.
Well, let's talk to the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, who joins us now. Morning to you, Kevin. Am I wrong here? But it just makes me think that the nurses are suddenly thinking, actually, we might be on the verge of losing quite a bit of sympathy here.
Yeah, I mean, that is the gamble, I think, for the RCN. Up until now, there's been a lot of support, public support for nurses. Obviously, there's a lot of sympathy, I think, out there in the country. People remember during the pandemic, etc. But I think that is always, as I say, that is the gamble that the union takes, that if they go too far, if, God forbid, they were unable to provide the cover for in an emergency situation and people were injured or even worse, died, then that could turn very quickly. And the whole dynamic of the unions is changing as well, because last night we had the GMB union. They voted to accept the pay deal. Unison have also voted to accept the pay deal. So there's a bit of a split in the union movement as well. So it's not exactly clear cut.
I mean, it's pretty extraordinary what we're talking about now, isn't it? I mean, there's now a scramble from the nurses to provide their own cover whilst they go out on strike. I mean, many people would just say, well, what's the point in going then?
Well, yeah, I mean, they've stepped up the intensity of the industrial dispute for this strike. They've said that they won't provide carve-outs, emergency cover in areas like A&E, for instance. Now, what the union have said is not if there is an exceptional case, then of course their members will go to work, but that will only be in an exceptional case, and obviously that raises concerns about patient safety. But I think they are being mindful of the fact that the public opinion is very important in these types of disputes, and they don't want to get on the wrong side of public opinion. So if, as I say, in an exceptional circumstance, they will obviously step in, but they're trying to avoid basically doing any work at all because they think that gives them more leverage in their campaign to get a better pay deal.
Well, and they certainly did have a lot of leverage. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the RCN might represent the majority of nursing staff. However, as you say, the unions are split now. I mean, it seems, at least on the surface, that the RCN is really out on a limb.
Yeah, I mean, it's the RCN and Unite union actually yesterday. They announced as well that they're rejecting the deal. But as I say, the GMB, Unison, the Royal College of Midwives, they've accepted the deal. Now, there's going to be a meeting next week of the NHS Staff Council at which the unions will get together and vote on whether to accept the pay deal. Now, it's expected that the unions, that council will actually vote to accept the pay deal, in which case all the members, the union members and the NHS employees will get the pay rise that the government is offering. And then that begs the question, will the strike then continue? I'm not sure it will. So we could be looking at the end of the dispute coming quite soon, which, although it won't come soon enough to stop this weekend strike action.
No, of course not. And I mean, it is quite awkward, isn't it now? The RCN is in quite an awkward position in the sense that they accepted the union, the government's offer. They suggested to their members that they should accept that offer too. And then the members, by a very thin margin, said, no, it's not good enough, leaving the RCN in the position where it said that to the government, yes, this looks like a good deal on the surface, now have to go back and say, actually, no, it's not. You're going to have to cough up something more.
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to say I think the RCN leadership haven't had a great couple of weeks. You're right, they recommended to their members that they accept the deal. The members, I think by 55 to 45, something like that, voted to reject the deal, so they're now having to reballot for a further 6 months of strike action. But not only that, obviously they were taken to court by the government and lost their case. So this weekend strike action was actually supposed to be 24 hours longer than it's going to be. So they'd messed up the dates there. So the second day wasn't a legal strike action. So they're not having the best of times, the RCN leadership. So now they're allying themselves with their members, as you would expect. And we'll wait to see what the result of the second ballot is when that takes place. But as I say, I think by then we might be at a situation where the unions as a whole have accepted the pay deal, and in which case strikes may not actually take place.
I know it's all about optics. A lot of this is, from public perception at least, Kevin, it's about optics. Am I alone when I was really shocked when we just sort of said there about Great Ormond Street being really worried, because that's a children's hospital. And I mean, you don't want nurses to be striking anywhere, of course, and every life and every ill person is important. But when it comes to a children's hospital, I was really surprised that they're affected by strikes as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is very worrying, obviously. And as I said earlier, it's all about leverage, I guess. That is the ultimate threat, I suppose, that the union can have over the employers, that they will withdraw their labour in areas like children's medicine as well. Now, obviously, all the nurses, they are trained and they swear an oath to protect life and help people. They do not want to be doing this. And I think that if push came to shove it in an exceptional circumstance, I think you would see the nurses step in rather than stand on the picket line. But again, we're in an industrial dispute. Tough choices have to be made, and it is very uncomfortable. But I think I get the sense that the industrial action is perhaps we're closer to the end of it now than we were to the beginning.
OK.
Yeah, I mean, politically, there is still a challenge, isn't there, for Steve Barclay and for Rishi Sunak, because they need to restrain public sector spending, don't they?
They do, and even if they get a deal with the NHS workers, teachers are still out. There's no agreement there and no prospect of an agreement anytime soon, I don't think. Civil servants as well are going to go on strike. So, this is by no means the end of the public sector disputes if the NHS unions vote to accept a deal. And you're right, thus far, both Rishi Sunak, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, and Steve Barclay in the health sector have said that basically this is as good an offer as you're going to get. So we've hit a bit of a deadlock, certainly as far as the teachers and the civil servants are concerned. It's difficult to see who's going to blink first.
Yeah, it is. Kevin, look, really good to talk to you. Catch up with you soon. Thank you. I just wonder let us know what you think in terms of your sympathy. I'd say for me, I've been a bit on the fence. Great Ormond Street, though.
I know.
That for me is a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, it's quite distressing, isn't it, to hear them talk about their concerns over their ability to provide a safe level of care for children. I mean, it does strike you differently, doesn't it? Pardon the pun. Yeah, managers at Great Ormond Street have declared a severe business continuity incident, basically saying they're concerned there's not going to be enough people there to actually look after the children. It does seem difficult, isn't it, when it starts to affect children who have absolutely no say in their own care.
No.
Very difficult. Yeah, let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
It's 12 minutes past 6. Also today, Labour's promising to invest in more teachers who are specialists in their subject if they win the next election. The Shadow Education Secretary says schools are scrambling to fill roles, meaning there aren't high standards for all children. And we'll talk to the Shadow Secretary of State later in the show.
The Royal College of Nursing is working with health leaders to provide some staff during its bank holiday strike. The decision is a U-turn, having previously said there would be no exemptions. The NHS has warned they're likely to cancel 500,000 appointments due to the industrial action.
The Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end today. Oliver Dowden says that decision was made after a significant decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, about 1,500 Brits have been rescued. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has finished a world tour, as it were, by meeting the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly yesterday.
Yes, in a bid to boost his foreign policy credentials, the Conservative politician and potential Trump rival discussed British-Florida relations on his visit yesterday.
So, of course, is this all the preparation for a run to be the Republicans' nominee for president? Well, of course it is. Let's put it to former presidential advisor Steve Gill, who joins us now. Steve, good to see you this morning. Look, in all of this, it's interesting. He's still determined to put a fight, isn't he, Ron DeSantis? And yet, it's going to be quite a tough battle now that we know Trump is definitely in the running.
Yeah, and you cracked the code. This world tour is a pretty good precursor to the fact that he's running. The only thing missing is he doesn't have one of those like satin jackets like rock groups do when they do their world tours. I think he missed the opportunity there. But he does have, I think, a challenge with Donald Trump. The indictment, the other legal action, and the fact that Donald Trump has come out swinging like crazy against Ron DeSantis is going to make it a very tough run for Ron DeSantis to supplant Trump as the Republican nominee, even though a lot of people think that DeSantis would have a better chance in the general election at attracting women voters, young voters, independent voters than Donald Trump will.
How has this world tour gone down in the US and in US media? Because a lot of this will be DeSantis wanting to look statesmanlike, isn't it?
Well, and to burnish his international credentials. As a governor, he doesn't do a lot in the international foreign policy arena, although, as you pointed out, Britain and Florida do a lot of business together. So there is a legitimacy to his trip to London. But on this trip, he's been to Japan, he's been to South Korea, he's been to Israel. And again, it's to kind of wrap himself in the foreign policy credentials that he wants to have. Even though Americans tend to be pretty isolationist when it comes to foreign policy and our politics, I think he's still wanting to look like he'll be able to perform on the world stage. And I think, he's got the personality, he's got the charisma to do that. The question is whether or not Americans will vote on that basis rather than the economy and some of the other issues that are going to be at the top of mind.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it worked so well for Obama, didn't it, when he was running? You sort of think about those scenes in Germany and things, and it worked really well for him. But you have to say, do Americans, do they take back those visuals? Do they think, well, someone like Ron DeSantis is popular on a world stage, getting a decent reception, compared to Trump, of course, where he's just surrounded by protesters?
Well, I think part of it is he's wanting to establish himself that compared to Biden, he's somebody that can get along with foreign leaders, that has respect from foreign leaders, that'll be able to perform on a world stage a lot better than we've seen from President Biden and his administration, particularly because of his military background as well. When we've seen the debacle of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the tragedy of what's going on in Sudan, the looming World War III, perhaps, America gets further embroiled in Ukraine and Russia, and then you've got China looming out there threatening Taiwan. I think his foreign policy agenda is to show how he can compete with Biden more than how he'll compete with Trump in a primary. And his biggest problem with Trump right now, I think, is that Trump has made it clear he may not do debates. So Trump's going to basically do, I guess to use a boxing term, the rope-a-dope and not give Ron DeSantis the chance to land any blows on him, while at the same time, if DeSantis performs in debates with the lower tier candidates, he'll be looking like he's at the kiddie table at Thanksgiving rather than performing on the big stage.
And this fight really is ramping up now between Trump and DeSantis, isn't it? I mean, Trump, who's been complimentary, it must be said, of DeSantis before, has started to really ramp up his attacks towards him. And then back at home, DeSantis is now facing that conflict with Disney.
Yeah, and one of the things that DeSantis has in his favor is that he is a younger candidate, has a lot of the same policies as Trump. and has a huge war chest available to go after Trump. But Trump already has third parties that are attacking DeSantis aggressively, both on TV and in ads around the country. So they're already taking shots at DeSantis. He just had the legislature in Florida pass legislation that will allow him to run for president and keep his job as governor at the same time. There was a law in Florida that would have prevented that. The legislature has just changed that to open the door for him to run without having to quit his governor's job. But at the same time, he's going to wait another 2 or 3 weeks until the legislature finishes to officially get in the race. And at that point, he's going to be 30 points perhaps in the Republican primary behind Donald Trump.
It's interesting. What do you make of the experts who say, look, if it was Trump-Biden again, Biden would win? What if it was Trump-DeSantis? Biden-DeSantis.
Yeah, I think, in 2016, I always felt like Donald Trump was the only candidate who could beat Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton was probably the only candidate who could lose to Donald Trump. I think we're looking at the same sort of thing here. Joe Biden may be the only who can beat Donald Trump, but probably would not be able to beat Ron DeSantis. We saw in our midterm elections here in the U.S., where Donald Trump's endorsement of candidates carried a huge amount of weight with Republican primary voters, but then didn't carry over as much in the general election as he had problems with suburban women, independent voters, young voters. That has not been cured. And a lot of those same demographics appeal more to a DeSantis campaign than they do to Biden. And I think gives Biden a chance to maybe beat Trump, but probably have a harder time against Ron DeSantis.
And Steve, whilst we've got you, I did just want to get your reaction on President Biden announcing that he was going to run for a second term, because I know there's been lots of concern over his age and the fact he'll be 86, I think, by the end of that second term.
Yeah, it's interesting in his video announcement, because they didn't trust him to actually do a live announcement that he could fumble and bumble through. He didn't mention a single accomplishment. Mainly because there aren't any accomplishments that he can really run on. He talked about being in favor of freedom and democracy. A lot of folks kind of scoff at that when you look at the weaponization of our justice departments, our FBI, the lack of freedom that was imposed with people being forced to wear masks and shutting schools. I don't think the I'm for freedom and you're not is going to carry Biden very far when people are paying too much for groceries, too much for gas. Again, seeing the foreign policy disasters around the world. People, I think, are going to vote their pocketbooks, not, some kind of old man in the basement, screaming, "Get off my yard."
No, say what you mean, Steve. Say what you mean. Really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, are you planning a great bank holiday getaway? Don't. Just stay at home. Your train may be cancelled, and we'll tell you what travel issues you may need to look out for. And there's quite a few. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, Carol's been in touch about barbecues. Morning, Carol, because according to The Star, 50% of women say they're better at barbecues than their men. Excuse me, says Carol, some men don't even know how to put cornflakes in a bowl. Yet twice a year, all of a sudden, they think they're Gordon Ramsay trying to poison us with raw chicken and burgers. And yes, Stephen, women know how to light coal for a barbecue.
Oh, you're being told off now.
Well...
We're only 23 minutes in.
Geraldine, who's in Bury St Edmunds, says, Ellie is right. Not a clue about managing the coals, but everything else, yes, that'll be me.
I'm telling you, women do
It's
it
a
all.
prep.
We do the lion's share, and the men just flip the burgers. Jane agrees, Ellie is so right. I mean, there's a theme here, Stephen. Women do all the prep for barbecues. Men just turn over the burgers and steaks and are nightmares on barbecues when it comes to vegetarians with their cross-contamination. Great point, Jane.
That is true.
Can't be trusted.
Who, the men?
Clearly.
Well, I don't know. Men, email in, please. gbviews@gbnews.uk. It's a travesty. It's the final humiliation for men, says The Star. I sort of agree. Let men have their fun on a barbecue day.
Yeah, yeah.
It should be better to do than going away when the weather's nice.
Yeah, maybe stay in the garden and barbecue. Maybe that should be the takeaway from all of this.
Yes.
Because if you're planning a getaway in May or June, you might want to check before you travel because your train may be cancelled. Just days ago, the RMT and the Train Drivers Union, ASLEF, declared more rail strikes for next month and June as well.
Yeah, the unions are accusing train operators of torpedoing negotiations. Simon Calder, travel guru, is here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why are negotiations being torpedoed? Do we know?
OK, well, if you listen to the RMT General Secretary, Mick Lynch, he says that the train operators, and we're talking here about 14 companies, all of which are contracted by the government to provide train services. So forget franchising, all that stuff. Effectively, we've got a nationalised rail system with outsourcing. And the government is kind of behind the train operators' negotiations because ultimately whatever settlement it is coming out of your taxes and mine to pay for this because the finances are in a right old muddle. The government is saying you've got to improve productivity because otherwise we can't afford to do this. And the rail unions are sort of saying, well, no, we've worked through COVID, we want to have a pay rise without any strings attached. And we think... And therefore, the deal that we thought we'd done, you've changed it at the last minute. The train operators say, no, we haven't. Over at ASLEF, Mick Whelan, Train Drivers Union, there's going to be a quiz at the end, Ellie, I hope you're paying attention. The Train Drivers Union, they say, we just want more money, basically. Oh, and by the way, you can't attach strings to that. So, effectively, we are pretty much where we were a year ago before we went into the first set of national strikes since the 1980s. And for us train travellers, I don't have a car, millions of people out there don't have a car, your train ticket is still a lottery ticket. You cannot plan more than 2 weeks ahead because that's the minimum length of time that the unions must say they're going on strike. So it's an absolute mess. And just to remind people about those dates, it's Friday the 12th of May, the day before the Eurovision final. That's the first day of the train drivers' strike. Following day, it's the RMT union, the main rail union. And then on the 31st of May and the 3rd of June, then it's the train drivers again. And if you're in Wales or Scotland, lucky you, partly because you're living in a beautiful country, partly because your trains are going to be largely unaffected.
Oh, dear. But are we safe to assume that for people travelling for the coronations next weekend, as you just said, you need that 2 weeks' notice. The unions need to give 2 weeks' notice before any strike action. You're pretty much safe to head down to London on the train.
Yes, you are. Actually, this weekend is going to be pretty grim if you're trying to use the West Coast main line, particularly tomorrow. Frankly, I wouldn't bother. If you're going to beautiful Blackpool, then it looks like the bus or the car. And next weekend, everything is going to be working normally, sometimes better than normally, with extra trains being put on, for instance, early in the morning from Cardiff to London Paddington. And the only kind of major engineering work is closing one half of Victoria Station, which affects the main line to Gatwick and Brighton. But there's another way you can go to London Bridge. So it will be fine. We just don't know how the transport system in London will stand up to it, because we haven't had a coronation for quite a long time. There's more of us than there used to be.
Yeah, no, it's going to be chaos, I should think, isn't it? In terms, why is it that it now seems to be a point where you just dread having to go anywhere in this country, don't you?
Yeah, well, look, it's very, very easy with so many aspects of modern life these days just to think, oh, it's terrible, things are much worse than they used to be. Well, I can reveal exclusively, being much older than both of you put together, that actually this is pretty much the best of times for travellers.
Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, actually 2019 was the best year.
Oh, now that's an interesting spin.
Yeah. But no, it's fantastic. You can travel to more places for better value, in greater safety than you've ever been able to. And the trains are better than they have been when they're running.
Yeah.
They are, honestly. Trust me, I remember British Rail and their sandwiches.
Yeah. Are we just getting really impatient then? Expecting too much?
No, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that the trains for which fare payers pay a lot of money, for which taxpayers pay a heck of a lot of money, and most of them don't go near a train, it's not too much to expect that those should run in a sensible way, and that kind of binds the nation together. But in terms of going abroad, look, it's purely in terms of safety. It has never been safer than now. We've got the safest airline in the world, Ryanair, second safest airline in the world, EasyJet. Fantastic.
Really? Is that
yeah,
how it
in
works
terms
out?
of the number of passengers flown without a single fatal accident, it's quite extraordinary how well served we are by our airlines. British Airways, very safe, Jet2, etc. All fantastic airlines. So that's good. And everything else after that, well, it is a terrific time to be a traveller. It's going to be even better probably by about a year's time, because then all the airlines will have come back, the fares will have come down, and hopefully the train strikes might be over.
And the disputes are sorted. And for people heading out on the roads this weekend, I mean, we already saw a lot of traffic yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah,
what can people
actually,
expect?
last night, late afternoon, early evening yesterday was pretty horrible for a lot of people. That was predicted by the RAC. And from now on, there's going to be a bit of a rush coming back Monday afternoon, bank holiday, of course. But it's largely going to be dependent on how nice the weather is. And since it looks like being very pleasant, then probably lots of people will be going for days out, in particular to the seaside. So that could get quite busy. Really good time to go by train, as long as your line is running.
All right, with the weather being nice, Simon, it's nice barbecue weather.
Yeah.
Who is best at barbecuing, Mr. or Mrs. Calder?
Well, that's irrelevant, because we don't do any barbecuing. You need a nice big garden to barbecue. I live in London and don't quite benefit from that. But no, the only barbecuing worth doing is when you are on a Trans-Africa overland truck and you have this fantastic cook, and he or she will just be organising everybody and everything, and that's the kind of barbecuing you need. So head for Africa. Yeah.
Right. Well, it sounds very nice.
She.
Yeah, of course.
So,
yeah.
So it can be anybody.
The gender is
You're not
relevant.
going to pick sides.
It's skill and expertise and experience. That's what you need.
Yeah.
Well, there you
go. Well, that might get you talking. Simon, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Simon.
There's some great stories in the papers this morning. How about this one? Surgeons operate only once every fortnight. That's according to the Telegraph. Once a fortnight. There you go. And look at that great picture of Charles when he was 18. There you go. That's special. We'll show you more of those next. This is GB News.
I I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
6:34, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And the countdown is officially on. 1 week to go until the coronation. We will be there at Buckingham Palace.
Oh, yes, we will.
Yeah, there's a great picture of a young King Charles here on the Daily Telegraph. 18 years old.
It looks like he's having a mugshot done. But there
It
you
does,
go.
a little bit.
But there you go.
Yes.
He's grown into his looks,
Yes,
I feel.
Yeah, I would agree with that, I think.
There's a nice picture on the Express, and actually you can just sort of see it at the top there. It's a priceless moment when a 2-year-old snatches the Princesses of Wales handbag during a visit to the Aberfan Memorial.
Did you see that video yesterday?
No, I didn't see the
Wonderful.
video.
So this child obviously got good taste, just pinches the handbag and then wouldn't give it back. So the Princess of Wales just carries on greeting everybody in the crowd and the mum just has to kind of grab this handbag out of the child's hand, eventually gives it back. The Princess of Wales just walks off, just lets the baby have it.
Oh, I would have wanted a good route through.
Yeah, very good.
Right.
Anyway, makes for amusing viewing. If you want to watch something today, that's something to put a smile on your face. Some great photos in the Eye this morning from Sudan, something totally different now. British nationals boarding the RAF aircraft at the base in Khartoum. I believe they have finished now, haven't they, those repatriation flights?
Oh, they're finishing today.
Finishing today.
They're finishing today, which sounds, you sort of think, blimey, there's still people, but they are saying that the numbers are really dwindling.
Yeah, and those doctors we were talking about yesterday, many of them actually did make it onto that flight. We're talking about NHS doctors that were stuck in Khartoum. Many of them have now made it.
And now a pub that I frequent is making the front of the Sun this morning.
Oh.
Believe it or not, I've not been in for a year or two, but anyway, it's up in Barrow, in Furness. It's a picture there is of the £1.3 billion submarine HMS Anson, built in Barrow. Some classified documents were left in the bathroom of the Furness Railway, which used to be the post office. There you go. There you go. So they left. They weren't that important, actually. When you read the details, they weren't really.
That's
that
a great
important.
story. It sounds like drama.
But they were left in the toilet at the Wetherspoons. So there you go. The things you find when you go to Spoons. There you go.
I don't know what you might stumble across in Spoons Lou.
It's a great story. The assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, is here with podcast host Sean McDonald. Good to see you both this morning.
Morning.
Cindy, let's have a look at the Times, should we? And looking at the NHS strike.
Yes. So obviously strikes are back on because 2 nursing unions have voted against the government's pay offer. So from tomorrow until Monday midnight, there will be another 2-day strike. The government actually managed to limit this one because going to court because of this kind of technicality in the rules, that means that they couldn't actually strike on Tuesday. So a 3-day strike is going to come down to a 2-day strike. But even so, Great Ormond Street Hospital has said that it has serious concerns over its ability to provide for patients given the strikes. And I think this is the concern that's being reflected throughout the healthcare sector. You know, different hospitals have said we literally can't guarantee minimum service with these numerous strikes. And it's not just nurses, it's also junior doctors. So there's worries that actually later on they might combine strikes. Not great for the post-COVID waiting list.
No.
But also no end in sight, really.
I mean, as you say, Cindy, we've heard these warnings before, haven't we? But Stephen and I were discussing earlier, it feels different when it's about children. I mean, children who have no say in their own care.
Yeah, absolutely. We're coming back to that impasse of needing, whether it's an improvement in working conditions or a more sustainable sort of landscape in which their medical professionals are working. But like you say, when it comes to kids, it kind of really, it makes you take a step back. It's like a bit of a jolt to the system. It's something that, yeah, I mean, for all patients, for anybody who's in need of care and treatment, you would hope that they would come to a resolution before the point of having to carry out any strike action. And yeah, there's a more of an added attachment and weight of emotion when it's children we're talking about.
If a child dies as a result of this, there'll be hell on, won't there?
Yeah, I think so, but it'll be hard because, you know, the unions, what they say is not our strikes that are putting people in danger, it's dangerous working conditions that are putting people in danger. So it's kind of, you know, it's both. I mean, it's gun to your head kind of stuff. Really.
Rock in a hard place, isn't it?
It was quite interesting this morning talking about the RCN actually arranging staff to backfill them when they go out on strike, which is quite remarkable, really, isn't it?
Yes, and then the RCN says that, you know, obviously they don't want to put anyone in danger, but I mean, the very point of these strikes, you know, working, is that they are threatening the system somehow, so they kind of have to, by the very virtue of striking, you know, make the system come to a standstill, otherwise the strikes wouldn't work. So, you know, there's only so far they can do without actually accepting the pay offer.
Let's have a look, Sean, at The Guardian, should we? And Richard Sharp, the former chairman of the BBC.
Yes, Richard Sharp resigning yesterday. It took quite a while. I know these things are subject to investigation. You have to go through due process, but I was quite surprised by how long it took for it to play out. Now, The Guardian are reporting it from an angle that surprised me slightly, because they're saying that Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister's under pressure to stop appointing Conservatives to key positions at the BBC after Richard Sharp's resignation prompted criticism that the party had basically undermined the broadcaster by flooding it with cronies, is how they're wording it. I don't think that Rishi Sunak will be particularly perturbed by this, because it gives him the opportunity to appoint somebody else who's going to preside over in the BBC for the next, would it be 5 years, maybe 6 years, and with what I believe will be an outgoing Tory government. I think the main angle I would like to see pushed is that the government shouldn't really have as much of an input into this. Whether you're red, whether you're blue, Labour, Tory or otherwise, I think it should be a completely independent process, because, I mean, Labour will have appointed their chairman as well, so they're not without wrongdoing. But I think in this instance, it has been such a shocker. I mean, having looked at the sort of process of Sharp's appointment, his name was leaked to the media. He discussed the job with Boris Johnson. He even discussed the arrangement of the personal loan prior to his appointment, and it stinks to high heaven of cronyism, to be honest.
But part of me would sort of say, well, look, he's resigned because there was sort of perceived.
No.
You know, it was a perceived wrongdoing, wasn't it?
It's not a perceived wrongdoing. You can't be helping the Prime Minister acquire an £800,000 personal loan. That's not perceived wrongdoing, Stephen. That is absolute and unequivocal wrongdoing.
But, well, if it's linked to his appointment.
But, I mean, it is linked to his appointment.
Is it, though?
But so if he'd
hold on. But my other point is...
Stephen, hold on.
No,
Come on,
But my other point is, what is wrong with political appointments in something like the BBC.
I'll tell you, Stephen. I'll tell you what is wrong.
If anything is a political animal, it's to the
left,
if
you are the chairman of the national broadcaster, you cannot sit down with the Prime Minister and say, by the way, get me this job, I can pull a few strings, you'll get an £800,000 personal loan. I mean, viewers watching
That's what we don't know happened, right? We don't know that conversation happened. That's the problem, because it looks really, really bad. Like, on the one hand, he's procured this loan. On the other hand, he's got this job. The linkage in between is what we don't know necessarily happened. And for Richard Sharp, his own defence is that he told Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, every single step of the way. Simon Case now says he can't recall those conversations. So Richard Sharp, you know, to be very, very charitable, thinks that he did everything right.
Yeah.
He clearly had a direct line to the Prime Minister that not all candidates for this job would have done. But Simon Case now also says that he never had that conversation. So you can see why, you know, I agree, Sean, it does stink. But I just don't know if there's a smoking gun to know that conversation...
But does it matter if these are political appointments?
Well, I think the BBC institution is so strong inside that if anyone was trying to push a party line, we would hear about it. In the sense that the people who worked with Richard Sharp over the course of his appointment actually say that he was quite a good chairman, that he didn't push any party lines. And I think, you know, political appointees don't necessarily have to be politically card-carrying, you know, loyalists. So, you know, if Rishi Sunak will appoint someone, because that's the way that the job works, but he doesn't have to appoint someone like, I don't know, like a former Tory MP or something like that.
I think, you know, if Sunak was to be sagacious in his sort of forward planning, then he would say, in order to restore credibility, you know, we will leave it to an independent panel, and I think it would probably restore a bit of much-needed credibility for the party if he was to say, you know, let's make this independent, especially if the Conservative administration were the ones to sort of implement that.
I mean, Rishi Sunak was distancing himself from the whole thing, wasn't he? I mean, Richard Sharp was his former boss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, former boss.
Anyway, Cindy, let's head over to Sudan now. We've been talking about it this morning, but the Russians are there. Putin's top mercenaries are apparently fighting in Sudan.
Yes, so they're definitely Russian mercenaries. This is the Wagner Group, the very, very infamous Wagner Group that can be found in most kind of African conflicts, it seems. They're mercenaries, as you say. There's a real question over how much they're directed by the Russian state. Nevertheless, they're clearly very, very close to the Russian state because the person who owns them, Prigozhin, is known as Putin's chef. So there's like, again, we're talking about personal relationships here. And so anyway, they deny that they're on the ground there, but various sources have told the Eye that they've spotted white paramilitaries or Wagner Group uniforms. And basically, the idea is that Sudan has so much gold in terms of mined gold that the Wagner Group wants to secure this route of gold out of the country, possibly to fund the Ukraine war.
Why would... The one thing that strikes me about this, I don't know, is it just me being over-analytical, but it sounds quite subversive. Why would they then do it in Wagner Group uniforms? If this was actually happening, wouldn't we want to keep it
Well, I honestly
below the
think
radar?
these could be like mercenaries, just companies taking contracts. I mean, that's what mercenaries do, right? They go around the world, they look for conflicts, they help, you know, entrench conflicts. In Sudan, it clearly seems like there's a civil war going on where no one side is coming out. So they seem to be supporting the RSF, Hemeti's side, with various, you know, weaponry and obviously manpower. Apparently, it's a known secret on the ground in Sudan. So I just don't know if it's state-directed, because it actually, at various points during this war in Ukraine, there's been moments where the Wagner Group has actually criticised Putin for not going far enough. So I think to some extent they do have operational independence.
Right. Oh, interesting. Can I just get you, while you're here, in terms of what is going on with China and Russia and Ukraine, and I don't know if it's happened yet, but there was talk of a call between Xi Jinping and Zelensky.
Yeah, it happened on Wednesday.
Right.
We weren't sure if it was ever going to happen because it was talked about in March, then it never happened, and then suddenly it happened on Wednesday. So real questions over why it happened then. Could it be that Macron's visit, you know, Xi Jinping was trying to give the French president some face to say, we can be the West's best friend, possibly? Or could it be that the Chinese ambassador to France, I don't know if you guys covered this on the show last weekend, made a massive gaffe saying that post-Soviet states don't actually have legal status to be sovereign on television, and that was very bad. And so it could be that they're trying to walk back that line as well. So, yeah, China's now sending a mediating envoy to Ukraine and trying to kind of really step that up. We'll see.
It's quite amazing, really, that China's coming out as the peacemaker.
Well, we'll see. Let's see how it goes, actually.
Yeah, well, at least wanting themselves to appear like the peacemaker. We'll say that much, shall we? Sean, let's look at something totally different now, and this is a bid to ban tourist tax.
Yes.
There'll have been
To simplify that for anyone who's unaware, the tourist tax, or basically the scrapping of the tourist tax, was the scrapping of VAT refunds for foreign visitors coming to the UK who are shopping. And it is actually having quite an impact on the UK economy for big fashion brands and boutiques, but also for small businesses as well. You've got, I think, so I'm going to butcher his name here, but it's the M&S bosses, it's Stuart Mason, Marie LeBlanc, who's head of Victoria Beckham's fashion brand, is saying it would boost the economy. But you've even got former Conservative cabinet ministers like Ian Duncan-Smith chiming in and saying that it's time to reverse this. I'm not sure, does anybody know the fiscal reasoning for actually scrapping it in the first place?
But they reckon there'd be more... to raise money. I thought they would raise money by...
It's tremendously short-sighted, isn't it? Because the point that's being made as well, and I can completely see where people are coming from, is that when it comes to people coming from, whether it's Asia, America, or from South America, that, they're looking at...
They're all flocking into M&S for a pair of knickers.
But we're talking about the economy. You look at people who come to places like, whether it's Bicester Village or they want to go shopping in London, and it makes a difference in Harrods. And if they're looking at their cultural reasoning for coming, and then they're thinking, and also shopping would be a great bonus, they might be looking at Milan, they might be looking at Paris, and it is tremendously short-sighted. And I never thought I'd say this, but I completely agree with the Daily Mail, and I think that there should be a reversal of this, because it will raise money in the short term, but now that we're seeing some fiscal recovery post-COVID, I think it's time to now be a wee bit more future and forward thinking.
So sometimes cutting tax raises revenue.
It can do.
I'm going to hold you to that, Sean.
Sometimes there's a key word there.
We've got 1 minute left, so Sean, I think we should talk about barbecues, because we've been talking about it this morning.
Yes.
We'll keep your one for next time, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's talk about barbecues. So 50% of women think they're better at cooking barbecues than men.
Yeah, 50% of women think they're better at cooking barbecues than men. The patriarchy has suffered a major dent.
Well, I mean, they're wrong, clearly.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because I always say, and this isn't me trying to paint myself as, aren't I the progressive feminist? But I just think women tend to be better at most things.
Yes, very
and especially when it comes to cooking, I'm far too impatient. I'm like, let's just get this cooked and get it out. I think it's something that needs a woman's touch. So I'm backing the women on this one.
Oh yeah. So you don't want to stand behind the barbecue with your striped apron on?
I'd rather be sitting with a beer, maybe taking care of the music.
I'm not sure that is the feminist perspective, actually, Sean.
Oh yeah. I know. By the way, I may have painted myself or pushed myself into a corner there. Not what I meant. I apologise.
Men can't
I'll have
win.
the beer. The women can be on the grill.
Cindy, what do you make of it?
I would help.
To be honest, I don't even have a garden, let alone barbecue, so I have to come back to you on that one, because, I mean, growing up, it was always what the men fight over, isn't it?
Yeah.
They were like clamouring to be first.
It's weird about
so
barbecue.
funny.
It's like an open flame caveman
something about fires, brings out the primitive instinct.
Yeah.
Oh, fire.
And they just must stand around it, often with a beer in hand.
Yeah.
It has to be a group project.
But there you go. It's the thing. So if women want to cook the barbecues, but then we're all accused of misogyny.
I don't care who cooks it, as long as I'm eating at the end of it. That's what I'm happy.
Lovely. Thank you both very much indeed. We'll see you a little bit later on.
Now, with just 2 weeks to go until Eurovision, there's a lot coming up, isn't there? Coronation, Eurovision. Anyway, preparations in Liverpool are now well underway.
Well, as you will have noticed, earlier this week, the King and Queen went to the competition venue and sort of turned all the lights on. Meanwhile, Scouse songstress Sonia, 1993, Better the Devil You Know, runner-up, great tune, teamed up with a very special choir to really get the party started.
Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper has the story.
Live from Liverpool. In just 2 weeks' time, Eurovision will be bursting onto our screens. In 1993, the city's born and raised Sonia took to the stage as the UK's entry. Now, 30 years later, Eurovision is coming to her.
I know you're originally from Liverpool. What does it mean to you to have Eurovision in your home city?
Wow, I'm just so proud. When we found out that we got it here, I was just ecstatic. As I say, I'm just unbelievably proud. It's going to be the best time ever.
This week, Sonia joined forces with a choir made up of refugees in order to mark a very special edition of Eurovision.
No matter if people are singing in English or a different language, music connects people together. And I just think it's going to be a really a celebration of everybody coming together and through music, you know.
United by music. That's the tagline of this year's Eurovision Song Contest, as it's hosted by the United Kingdom on behalf of last year's winners, Ukraine. Now, this choir features several Ukrainian refugees. They may have been forced to flee the conflict in their homeland, but they still have a message of hope that they want to spread. Choir soloist Tatiana was a vocal coach back in Ukraine, but when her town was hit by Russian rockets, she was forced to flee.
I was very afraid. I have 2 children, and my reaction was to run. I'm really happy that we did such a choice, because for this moment, it's almost a year. I'm in UK. Everything's perfect in my case, in my family, so yeah.
Since arriving in the UK, music has helped Tatiana restore some normality back into her life.
Not a lot of music was in my life this year, but I hope, and now I have inspiration to improve this. You see, universe shows me that if I'm here and if I'm singing, it's what I need to do. It's for me.
Funded by the National Lottery, the choir first started back in 2018. It brings together young refugees and asylum seekers from all over the UK.
I think music's a great healer, I think it's a great leveller, and most of all, it's a great communication tool. You know, whether they're from Ukraine or whether they're from Sudan or whether they're from Afghanistan, you can use music to communicate.
And that's what this year's Eurovision is all about. Bringing people together through music. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Love a bit of Sonia.
You enjoyed that, didn't you?
I do. It's a great tune back in the day that she did.
You love a bit of Eurovision.
I do like it, but I'll tell you for why.
Yeah, tell us.
It's just fun. It's a bit of fun. It's just a bit crackers. I mean, it is crackers. And, you know, I have to say, Graham Norton is very good. Terry Wogan was the king.
Legend.
And it's just fun. We just laugh at it, but in a fond way.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just really like it. I went to the Eurovision party of the week in London. I got invited by Nikki French, who was our competitor in 2000. And it's Austria for me this year.
Yes, he was playing it to me the other day. It's very catchy. I would agree with that. Austria's the one to watch.
Who the hell is Edgar? Is the name of the song. It's about Edgar Allan Poe, and you think, well, that's weird. It is weird, but it's catchy.
It works.
It just works, so that's going to get my vote this year.
I'd agree with you there. It's a bit of escapism, isn't it? And now we're back in the running, I feel. After coming second last year.
Yeah.
We can take it a bit more seriously, I think. Not be so embarrassed.
What I haven't heard is our entry this year.
Oh.
So I've no idea what that's like. I don't know how it's like, but the rest are good. Anyway, we've got more updates on the strikes, as well as the latest on the roads as a holiday getaway begins. First, though, here's your weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here with the latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Bank holiday weekend is here, and lo and behold, it's turning warmer and brighter for many of us, but not for all. Still some cold weather about first thing for Scotland and for the far north of England. A lot of cloud here as well, with an occluded front lingering. Elsewhere, yes, cloudy skies, but a milder start to the day for southern and western parts of the country. A lot of mist and murk covering some western coasts, and some outbreaks of rain across western parts of the UK as well, first thing. Now, as temperatures rise, the cloud will bubble up. We'll see some brighter spells developing in the south and the west, but also, as temperatures rise, we'll see showers developing. Northern Ireland, parts of Wales into the West Midlands, greatest risk for some slow-moving thunderstorms, and some hail could cause some problems into the afternoon. But away from the showers, actually feeling pleasantly warm in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius, whilst Scotland and the north of England, well, here we're just going to see 8 to 12 Celsius and a lot of cloud cover. Fairly extensive clouds then on Saturday night, with outbreaks of more persistent rain developing in western parts. Drier towards the southeast, a few mist patches for southeast England, and another frosty one for the far north of Scotland. But as we begin Sunday, for many it's a cloudy and mild start to the day. Outbreaks of rain moving through Scotland first thing, affecting western England as well as Wales and Northern Ireland. As temperatures rise, once again, we'll see showers rather than longer spells of rain. And again, it's northern and western parts of England, Wales and Northern Ireland where we'll see the slow-moving thunderstorms. The southeast, 19, 20 Celsius, largely dry with sunny spells. But it's in the southeast where we'll see those showers on Monday morning, as well as into the afternoon, with slow-moving downpours. And away from those showers, temperatures up to 21 Celsius.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 29th of April. Today, what are they playing at? As hospitals cry out over patient safety, the union that organised the nurses' strike is now scrambling to provide their own cover. You might have thought the COVID nightmare was over, but you might have to think again. Academics urge the return of masks, more vaccines, and yes, there is a new variant.
Can we jab away the flab? As another controversial weight loss injection is set to be approved for use in the UK, we debate the battle of the bulge. Move away vinyl revival. We're in the era of the cassette comeback. We'll be looking at the hype behind the latest trend in music.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Loads of you getting in touch about barbecues.
Oh, yeah, we've
Got
started
you going
something.
this morning. Ryan from Essex. Morning, Ryan. I'm a man and I do most of the cooking and definitely all of the barbecuing. Men are better at the barbecue, without a doubt. This is a story on the front of the Star this morning saying 50% of women think they're better at barbecuing. My beautiful wife would crack if she had to do the barbecue. They expect Dad to do it.
Yeah, see, I think actually they've got the polling wrong on the front page of the Star. I think more women than 50% would say they're better at barbecuing. Just saying. Let's have a look at this. Leon says, good morning, Ellie and Stephen. I do the barbecues in my house. We've got a great butcher's near me that puts together fantastic barbecue packs.
Keep reading.
Oh, I think Ellie and I would be the perfect team if she's good at making potato salads and coleslaw, which I think I am. If only I was 20 years younger and much better looking, Ellie, I could have everything sorted.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Leon.
Pam says, I'm with Ellie on this one. She's from Essex. Hi, Pam.
Oh, well, there you go, like me.
Yeah, my husband just stands over an open flame, flipping the meat, while I've spent all morning providing side dishes.
Yep.
And the joke is we have a fancy barbecue, so you just put the lid on and the meat cooks perfectly without the need for any flipping.
Well, Pam, I say you and I in Essex will knock up a good barbecue between us, the sides, the meat. We don't need the men.
Yeah, but how... Right, here's one for you. How many men actually eat all these sides that you're making? Salads, what else are you doing? Vegetable skewers.
Pasta salad.
Pasta salads,
rocket
potato salad.
Yeah.
How many men are eating that? They just want a burger and a bun and a bit of ketchup.
Yeah, but who's out buying the meat? Who's out getting the buns and the ketchup and the mustard and the mayo and putting it all out for you?
Leon's off to his butcher's.
Well, I think Leon's in the minority. I think most women do everything.
David says a real man does all the work having a barbecue. I buy the meat, marinade and season the meat, prepare the barbecue or smoker, cook to required doneness and serve it up. My wife just makes a salad and other side dishes.
Well, David, I think that's very good and hats off to you. But I think most men just stand there and do the flipping and I think women do all the work. And they do it well. So, yeah, keep those views coming in. You don't like barbecuing, or you do?
I don't know. Well, no, I don't know. My husband does barbecuing.
This one's quite a good cook. Though.
I'm a good
He's always
cook.
knocking up something special in the kitchen, aren't
I
you?
do, I'm all right, yeah.
Yeah, you're very good.
I'm good. But I never really barbecue. See, I'm not a barbecuer because I'm vegetarian, and so just never did it. But anyway, I never had a barbecue until recently. But now we've got one. But I don't do it.
But you would say men are better cooks at barbecues, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. See, we're not agreeing this morning.
Yeah.
And we often do.
It's our right to be better at barbecuing.
What, 'cause there's a flame involved?
It's a flame.
It's weird.
It's
Can
manly,
somebody
it's
explain that to
masculine.
me? Is that what it is? It's a manly thing. Keep those views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Lots of you getting in touch on the nurses, actually. Graham says, I think the nurses have used up street will do them even more harm than good. And the reason that we're talking about this morning is because the union behind the nurses' strike is now working with health leaders to provide staff during their own walkout.
Yeah, well, this is after hospitals, including Great Ormond Street, have issued warnings over patient safety.
The strike, which will start tomorrow evening at 8 p.m, was cut in half from 2 days to 1 after the High Court ruled the walkout broke ballot rules.
Let's talk to Conservative columnist Ben Obsijegti, who is here in the studio. Good morning to you. Nice to see you this morning. What do you make of this public sympathy argument? Because you get the impression it's waning, because the RCN are a little bit out on a limb on this one now.
I think it's a really interesting time. I think the High Court action this week that made sure that they had to reduce the strike action, given that it fell outside their own mandate.
And condemnation from the judge.
I think he saw it as being a huge waste of everybody's time. For them to launch a strike that effectively goes outside of the mandate, which would have been unlawful and would have put real pressure on their own members to strike at a time when they hadn't actually agreed to, used up, I think, a lot of goodwill there. And it's worth remembering that the election itself, when they voted against the pay deal, was only a 54% turnout. Sorry, 54% vote of a 61% turnout. So only 33%, roughly, of nurses actually voted to strike in the first place. So we see this now at the end of a 6-month period. They're going to have to reballot again if they want to keep these strikes going until Christmas. And there's a thought that Pat Cullen maybe took this to the High Court in order to drum up support for further ballot.
I mean, what is really remarkable that we're talking about this morning is the nurses now organising their own cover, working with health leaders in order to organise their own cover so that they are covered when they go out on strike. I mean, many people would be asking, well, what is the point? Do you think it is this threat of waning public support that means they don't actually want to cause as much disruption as what we're being warned about in the papers today?
Well, I think with this strike in particular, there are derogations. So effectively, there are no exemptions. So intensive care, A&E, cancer care, all of those nurses are going to be on strike, and that's going to put some serious pressure on some critically ill people. We've already discussed the Great Ormond Street issue and the fact that Great Ormond Street declared a business continuity incident yesterday because of their serious concerns about being able to provide critical care for those children this weekend. So I think there is a real feeling amongst some sections that should things go awry, badly awry this weekend, then that support is going to wane significantly.
Is this valid now? I mean, they're raising concerns about patient safety, right, as well as salaries and staffing issues and all the rest of it. When it starts to affect, and when you think of the children and A&E, does that devalue what they're doing?
I think
I'm trying to tread a fine line here.
Well, I think one of the complexities now that since this strike action was agreed to, the other unions within the NHS have agreed to the terms that were offered. So the GMB and Unison have already agreed to these terms, the 5% pay rise, which is actually a 10.4% pay rise for the lowest paid staff that brings them up to the real living wage. And within that, as you mentioned, there are measures about framework for staffing levels going forwards and patient safety. So there are measures in place within the current deal. So when this strike goes ahead, we'll see that on Tuesday, when the NHS Staff Council meets, it's expected to carry through because of the Electoral College voting system that they have in place.
Which would mean what, though, for the RCN?
Well, that actually means that all of the RCN staff who are on the current NHS pay grading agenda for change will receive the pay rise anyway if it gets approved on Tuesday. So despite the fact that they've rejected it, all of those staff will receive the 5% pay rise. And so going forward, asking them to ballot again on a pay rise that they've already had.
But it would be balloting again on an additional pay rise. But I mean, has Pat Cullen got any wind in her sails? I mean, she was quite belligerent outside the High Court the other day, blaming the government for all of this and dragging it through the courts, which the judge said wasn't the case. But the fact that she turned round and said to members, yeah, we've got a deal, it's a good deal, you should take the deal, can they then trust her to go back? Because she's now saying, well, we need more money, it's not a good deal. Well, it's not what she said a month ago.
I think the problem that she potentially has is that when those decisions were taken and the decision to strike took place, the goalposts have shifted in the background, and so they've sort of been left out on a limb by the actions of the other unions. And so I think there's going to be some fairly sort of stern words around what happens with the RCN and why they are now looking like an outlier, given that they represent a quarter of the staff within the health service, a fairly significant proportion, but that is going to be an outlier compared to the other unions and what they've accepted.
What do you predict will happen next, Ben? Do you think that they will get round the table and we'll have a new pay deal? Or do you think we could see strike action till Christmas, which is, at the moment, the worst-case scenario?
I think, given the, as we said, the turnout last time, the fact that these staff, if this carries through under the NHS Staff Council on Tuesday, will receive that pay rise that the other NHS staff receive, I think the willpower to continue that strike action through to Christmas may wane enough that even though there'll be some people who want to continue that strike action, I think it will wane significantly, and I don't think they'll get the ballot required the membership vote required to carry on.
But if they did, and they were pushing for, let's say, 6.5%, which is what they got in Scotland, where does that then leave the nurses and staff represented by Unison and the Royal College of Midwives and all, who've accepted the deal, and GMB and all the rest of it? Because they can't have, in effect, the RCN negotiating on the behalf of people represented by another union, can they?
I've got to be honest, I'm not sure where that would. I think that would lead to
It's a mess, isn't it?
Some quite ill feeling amongst the nursing community. So I'm not quite sure how that would pan out, particularly given so many other staff would have accepted the conditions that are on offer. So I think that could lead to some quite fractious relationships within those negotiations.
It'd be a two-tier pay system, wouldn't it? Ultimately, be nurses on different salaries depending on which union you belong to.
And that might lead to some serious changes in union membership, I would
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
But ultimately, what we're talking about here is whether or not the strike action goes on till Christmas. It's not going to be quick enough to stop the disruption that we're going to see this week. I mean, we're talking about 500,000 appointments, aren't we? It's a huge amount of disruption.
It is a huge amount of disruption, and I think the fact that they've had to negotiate coverage has made them realise that actually putting that much pressure on individuals, and particularly individuals who aren't well, they're the people that lose out at the end of the day. You can put as much pressure as you want on the government, but at the end of the day, the people who are going to suffer this weekend are going to be the patients who need that medical care.
Yeah. Talking about fractious relationships, what do you make of this barbecuing story?
Love a barbecue. Yeah. Absolutely love it.
But can women do it as well as men? Or should this be a male domain?
I mean, it should be something that you know. If you've got a man who's particularly passionate about cooking on an open flame, I think, like I am, I think I should be left to my own little domain to.
Why? What is it about an open flame that you like?
I think it's just the fact that sort of my partner's vegetarian, so it's the only time I actually get to handle red meats in a cooking environment. So I do like, and as for the sides, the vegetarian sides, I think it's got to be meat and more meat. Really,
Do you eat any sides on a barbecue?
Potato salad. It's taking up space that could be used for sausages and burgers.
You see, that's what I agree with. You need the sides. I mean, I'm vegetarian, so my stuff's all veggie on the plate anyway. But I don't eat the side stuff. It's a waste of time, isn't it?
Just drown it in more sauce.
So men do it better.
I'm not going. I'm just.
Go on. Go on.
Go out on a limb.
Yeah. There you go. Good. I'm not going. There you go, Ben. Really good to see you. Thanks very much
Ben.
indeed. Right.
Thank you.
That's what we needed to know.
And just on that nurse's story, Geraldine's been in touch saying, I'm sickened by the nurses' behaviour. How will they be able to look in the mirror when they return to find that a child has died? They will all be guilty. Shame on them, says Geraldine. It is emotional, isn't it? I mean, Sean touched upon it there in the newspaper review when you were talking about children. We're hearing Great Ormond Street warn now, and they're concerned that there won't be enough staff to look after very sick children. It's got that emotional factor, isn't it? I mean, as you said, every patient matters, all care matters, but when you're talking about children, have no say in their own care. It is. It's a lot more emotional, isn't it? Keep those views coming in on barbecues or the nurses' strike, anything you'd like to talk about today. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, also for you today, Labour's promising to invest in more teachers who are specialists in their subjects. That's if they win the next election. The Shadow Education Secretary says schools are scrambling to fill roles, meaning there aren't high standards for everyone, and we'll be talking to her later in the show.
The Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end today. Oliver Dowden says the decision was made after a decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, British forces have rescued more than 1,500 people.
Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf will lead a day of campaigning in Dundee today to mark a month since becoming SNP leader. What a month it's been. Mr Yousaf has had a tumultuous start to his time in charge. The arrest of former Chief Executive Peter Murrell, who's Nicola Sturgeon's husband. He's been investigated over party finances. And there was another arrest last week. So it's just absolutely been a nightmare for him. Ahead of his visit today, he assured supporters that party membership is on the rise and support for independence remains strong. It's the Treasurer, wasn't it, whose name escapes me, who was arrested last week.
Yes.
They've both been released without charge at this stage, but nevertheless, I mean, you wouldn't want to be First Minister.
No. I mean, what a first month in the job for Humza Yousaf. Yep, you wouldn't want to be him at the moment. Very, very challenging. Now, we were talking earlier about something that's going to make you smile. I said, if there's anything you're going to watch today, it has to be this wonderful clip of a little girl basically stealing the Princess of Wales handbag yesterday whilst she was walking around in Wales. If you are listening on the radio, little child, I'd say, a year, 2 years tops.
Oh, yeah.
Literally pinching the Princess of Wales handbag, the Princess of Wales laughing away, and she will not let go of that handbag. She's got good taste, I must say. Oh, 1-year-old boy, we're being told now here. The mother really trying to tease that handbag out of the baby's hand. It just is not coming. Just that child just clings on to
I like the fact that Kate wandered off.
Oh, yeah, very relaxed about the whole
She's very... So you wonder what's in it. Can't have a mobile phone in it. The baby's smiling his head off. Absolutely. Oh, there he goes, waving it about.
He will not let go of that handbag. And eventually the Princess of Wales comes back for her handbag. The mother manages to pry it out of her child's hand. But what an amazing family story. I mean, can you imagine that child being told on their wedding day, do you remember that time you stole the Princess of Wales handbag and wouldn't give it back?
Well, and of course, one day it'll be the Queen's handbag, won't it?
Yeah.
That'd
Absolutely
be nice.
incredible family story. And again, how lovely was Catherine with that?
I just sort of think it's quite nice that when that child is older and when Catherine is Queen, should their paths ever cross again, you'll be able to say, I pinched your handbag, and she'll remember it.
She will.
She'll remember it. She did go back for those 695 quid that handbag was.
How do you know that?
So there you go, magic.
Oh, it's very across your fashion.
Magic, yes.
Who's it by? Mulberry?
I don't know.
I think it is. I think I'd recognise a Mulberry.
Mulberry,
oh, yeah,
yes,
look.
Mulberry.
I know my bag,
I'm getting the vibes now, it's Mulberry.
He's being told it in his ear.
It's a lot of money for a bag, that, isn't it?
600 quid's not bad for Mulberry, actually, must be said. Yeah, they've gone up in price, as has everything. But, very good point, it was small. About the size of the baby's head.
Yeah, there you go. It's a very, very cute picture, though.
Yes.
Anyway, you needed cheering up this morning because you're not going to be cheered up after this, I hate to say it. Just when we thought we'd perhaps seen the back of COVID, experts are now suggesting we may want to wear masks on public transport again.
Yes, well, this comes over fears of a super infectious COVID variant called Arcturus, which is sweeping through England and could trigger a fresh wave of disease.
Yeah, virologists warn COVID still poses a threat, even though it's much milder. Of course, most of us are vaccinated, which makes a significant difference. We no longer have heavy restrictions in place, of course. Let's talk to data and COVID expert Tim White, who joins us now. Morning to you, Tim. Good to see you. Let's talk about Arcturus to begin with. What do we know about this variant?
Morning, Stephen. Morning, Ellie. Well, it is a variant of Omicron, so it has all those attributes. There's a little worry because of some slight changes, not to bore you with too many technicalities, that it could get through the defences of the body, even those that are vaccinated, slightly more easily. But that hasn't really been proven yet. They're just suppositions made by scientists. There is evidence that it is much more transmissible, so it's much easier to pass than what you might call a standard Omicron or some of the previous variants, the Kraken one that's going around predominantly at the moment. I would say it's a little unfair to say it's sweeping through the UK at the moment. It has seemed to be doing that in India, but we've seen in other countries variants take off and not really affect us that much here. So at the moment, I think it's just a question of wait and see.
Yes, and I suppose the message as well is don't be scared, don't be worried, because there is still a lot of fear, isn't there, out there, Tim, and we do need to be mindful of that. I mean, there are still many people that you see day to day walking around with masks on. I mean, generally older people, elderly people who are very afraid of COVID.
Yeah, and rightly so. I mean, you can understand, Ellie, if you've got elderly relatives, you'll be scared for them in crowded places, public transport, buses. You need to be sensible, though, when it comes to this. With regard to mask wearing, I wouldn't like to see a compulsory return to that. But I think for elderly people, for the vulnerable people, that wearing a mask certainly doesn't do any harm and can protect you. I think it's probably incumbent on all of us if we think we might have the infection because we no longer have to isolate. So if we're getting some of the COVID symptoms, and if this does prove to be a little more tricky for society to deal with, then we should be wearing a mask ourselves so that we don't spread it, because that would be a big help as well.
But the problem is, Tim, with masks, and look, I didn't have a problem with masks at the time. I don't like them, didn't like wearing them, but, if it had to be done, it had to be done. And yet, even now, there doesn't seem to be a great deal of data that suggests wearing a mask makes a huge amount of difference.
There are contrasting studies for sure, Stephen. I would say that if you're going to wear a mask for protecting yourself, then it has to be a medical mask. One of the reasons that was pointed out to me by an eminent professor was that the contrasting data, because those who don't like masks and won't wear them just won't anyway, or will deliberately go out of their way to wear them incorrectly. And so getting a whole population not only to wear the mask, to keep it on at virtually all times and to keep it fitted correctly, it just didn't happen. It may have helped slow a little bit and it may have helped protect some people. But if you really want protection, you need one of the medical masks, which you'll have seen with the little filter on at the front. Those are the best types. The other masks are just going to slightly reduce transmissibility.
Right, and they're the ones, of course, that most of us were wearing. Half the people with their nose popping out the top used to absolutely drive me crackers, that one, Tim.
You and me both, Stephen.
Tim, I mean, for lots of people watching and listening this morning, it will feel like Groundhog Day talking about a new variant, and they'll be worried, of course, about what that means, whether that could be resistant to a vaccine. It's important to say, isn't it, that the government will have plans for this, will have plans for new variants, especially worst-case scenarios, won't they?
Absolutely. And I think we should also point out that we've had this discussion before, and I'm sure you've had other experts on as well. There have been a lot of scare stories in the written media in particular about this worrying new variant. And actually, none of them since the end of restrictions has proved to be that difficult at all. Sure, we do get an increase in cases. We do get an increase there in hospitalizations. But they're the things that the scientists and the hospital managers are keeping an eye on. And of course, the health department, the government will be, at the moment, I would think, considering maybe rolling out even more boosters and maybe putting some more advertising out there to try and remind people that even though you're fully vaccinated, you might not be fully protected without another booster. And again, I'd just say, particularly if you've got vulnerable relatives or you're vulnerable yourself, then do try to get a booster. Contact the NHS as soon as you can.
Yeah, just try and be sensible with it all. Looking at the data, Tim, does it look like we are... I mean, still there are some, still plenty of cases about, and some people are ill with it, seriously ill with it. However, as a nation, are we starting to live with COVID?
Well, sure, of course we are. I mean, look all around us. As you said, it's the exception now to see people in the masks. People don't have to isolate when they have COVID, and there are people with COVID going to work. People used to go to work with colds and flu as well, and it will be ever thus. So yes, to answer your question, we are. And on a side note, looking at the data, there are relatively very few cases at the moment of this new strain. It might be more transmissible, so it may become the dominant strain, but it doesn't at this stage. And looking at the data overseas, particularly in India, where there are many thousands of cases, 60,000 new cases reported recently, it doesn't look like it's any more serious with regard to the worst effects of COVID, and the deaths are in line with previous COVID strains as well. So it's not, I don't think, going to cause a huge change to our society in the foreseeable future.
Oh, well, that's positive news. Tim White, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. I mean, I'll be getting I'm eligible for the latest jab, I think, though I've not had the call up yet. I'll be having that. Keep up to date with the jabs and all the rest of it. I'm not going to start panicking.
No, and that's a really important message. Do not panic, because I know a lot of people are very fearful of COVID, as Tim was saying, rightly so, especially if you're elderly and vulnerable. People are scared, and you can understand that.
Well, be concerned, be wary. Be sensible, but don't live your life in fear.
Don't live your life
It's when you see people, I see it sometimes, and often older, not always, but they're driving in a car on their own and they've got a mask on.
Yeah.
It's like, what's that all about?
Oh, I know.
What's that all about? You can't protect yourself against yourself.
I know, but they had that messaging, didn't they, for so very long. I mean, you can understand now people who are heading out and about. If you're elderly and heading to the shops and things, you just want to put your mask on and feel a bit more protected. You can understand that. Let us know what you think about that. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, is good old-fashioned healthy diet and exercise or weight loss jabs the best way to lose weight? We're going to be debating that next. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie. It is 7:29.
Yes, good morning to you. Thank you for all your messages coming in this morning. Sue from Huddersfield says, good morning, Ellie and Stephen. Always a bright morning when you are on. I honestly believe in the right to strike or protest, but I think all emergency services, including doctors and nurses, should be banned from striking. We were talking about this yesterday, weren't we? The police force and the armed services are not allowed to strike. I do think they should all receive an annual decent pay rise if this is the case, though. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point of view. On the COVID thing, Debs from Exeter says the experts making all the fuss are the Independent SAGE Committee, who are politically motivated and now seen by many as getting it wrong during 2020. Russell says complete and utter non-story scaring people. Masks do not work. How many times have we been told? More rubbish being spouted out for what is a cold. But it's worse. Well, it's yeah.
Peter...
Well, I think we're in a different situation because people are vaccinated. Basically.
Peter agrees with you, saying odd people are solo car drivers still wearing them. He's obviously seeing the same people driving about as you.
It's very odd, that.
Yeah,
It's
very,
weird.
very odd, yeah. Or people walking down the street, not busy streets, you know, just like around small towns and countrysides in masks. Very odd as well.
It is weird. It is
Yeah,
very strange.
yeah.
But, you know, you can understand the fear. But it's, say, if the masks sort of only really work if you, A, wear them properly, and B, wearing the right sort of mask,
many
which
people
most of them aren't.
Are doing neither of those things. Ray makes a good point, saying we are ignoring the fact that masks do not make much of a difference, especially if you're not wearing them properly. They do also affect the mental health of children.
Do they?
Well,
do they?
It must be quite scary, mustn't it, if you're really
I
little?
don't know. I mean, like in Asia, they wear masks all the time, and that's because of smog, and fumes, all that sort of thing. So if, if you go to China and all the rest of it, they're wearing them, and the kids have to wear them all the time.
It's a cultural thing, though, isn't it? I think
Yeah,
if
so
it's
does that
just being
affect their mental
introduced, it'd
health?
be quite scary. But anyway, the good point was most people have probably had COVID by now. Most people have natural immunity.
I've not had it.
Not that you know of, Stephen.
Not that I know
Could of.
Could have.
You could have had something very...
Could have had a small dose, but as far as I know, I've not had COVID.
Something that didn't affect you too much, hopefully. But keep those views coming in, whether that be on barbecues or mask wearing or...
Yeah.
What else are we talking about?
Barbecue. Well, that's about it, really.
Nurses' strikes.
Well,
Let us know.
you might want to have a view on this, though.
Yeah.
I bet you do, actually. Do you want to lose weight? Who doesn't want to lose weight? Most people want to lose weight, let's be honest. We have got an obesity epidemic in this country.
Yeah.
Anyway, there is a new weight loss drug set to be approved in the UK just a month after a similar, and it is an injection, so you can't just pop a pill. But anyway, a similar injection was approved by the NHS.
Yes, tirzepatide is similar to the already approved Wegovy, which has faced criticism for its PR strategy and potential conflict of interest in its manufacturer.
Yeah, but health authorities believe these new treatments could help millions beat obesity and, as a result, save the NHS billions of pounds.
Well, let's bring in the nutritionist and co-founder of #It'sFine, Ben Smith, who is against the injections, and the director of All About Obesity, Sarah Librock, who is in favour of this so-called skinny jab. Good morning to both of you. Really good to have you with us. Ben, let's start with you, shall we? So this is a miracle jab. Clearly, there's demand for it. 2 have been approved in recent times. Helps to solve obesity. What's the problem?
Well, I think for me is I've learned absolutely never to dismiss anything in this industry because everything can help different people in different ways. But I think, as you just mentioned there, it's a lot about the way that this is being marketed. I've already seen words like miracle being thrown in there, which ultimately it needs to be seen a lot more as an aid rather than a solution. So I'm not completely dead against it, but I've just got some concerns about how it's rolled out, who it's recommended to, what the expectations are that they're being told. For example, telling people that you can just have something without needing the effort in lifestyle changes and, exercise and reduction in what you're eating, and all those sorts of things are actually what are told to people anyway in the first instance, which clearly isn't working. And then another kind of problem that I have with it is this huge emphasis on appetite, and that appetite seems to be, particularly with a lot of these injections, driven by hormones and something that just happens to you, when ultimately someone that's suffering from something like an eating disorder, it's things like emotions and stress and their lifestyle and lots of underlying habitual behaviours that actually override appetite and cause these problems in the first place. So it's really, for me, it's a lot more about how they select people and what they're told they need to do, and also the management of things after weight loss and the education that they're given during the process.
Yeah, it's all a fair point, that, Sarah, isn't it? I mean, it's, on the surface, sounds great, does sound like a bit of a miracle, but as Ben says, perhaps it's a sort of sticking plaster over what could be a pretty serious problem.
No, I mean, I agree with what Ben's just said there. There's nothing that he's kind of said that I suppose I disagree with. I think the thing is, though, these drugs have been developed for people with obesity. So that's anyone with a BMI over 30. And depending on the licenses, some people have to have a BMI over 35 to qualify for this. So this isn't just for people that have got a couple of stone to lose. This is for people that have got the chronic long-term condition of obesity. So it's very much around supporting people that are kind of at the higher end of someone's body weight rather than the lower end. I think what's been happening in the US and kind of starting to in the UK a little bit is that the wrong people are getting hold of these products and therefore kind of using them when they shouldn't be. And this is where I'm concerned as well. It has to be the right person. And like Ben says, it has to be used in combination with kind of diet and exercise, psychological support. It needs to have a package around it. It's not just a case of give yourself an injection and off you go. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Is there a sense, Sarah, that for some people who, I mean, obesity can occur for a whole host of reasons, right? Does some people reach a point where they are just banging their head against a wall? They just cannot. They've lost all the will, all the drive, all the desire to actually do anything about it. I guess they sort of get themselves just in a trap of despair.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that people just kind of get to a point of like kind of going, oh gosh, what can I do now? I think what we find is most people that live with obesity, and I'm one of those, I live with obesity, we've spent years losing weight, putting it back on again, losing weight, putting it back on again, trying everything that we possibly can, and then kind of getting to a point where we're kind of going, well, what's going on? I mean, I lost 8.5 stone through diet and exercise 10 years ago, and I thought that was going to be me skipping off into the sunset as a skinnier, happier version of myself. But the reality was that wasn't the case, and that the weight slowly came back on despite me still training really hard and eating well. And that's because physiologically, when you live with obesity, your body is fighting to get back to kind of a set point, so a higher body weight when you've been a higher weight. And that's what you're kind of fighting against. So these injections, what they're doing is working with some of the physiological responses that are happening in your body and helping to regulate that so that you can then start maintaining this kind of diet and exercise routine and not have the noise of some of the physiological responses going on that you may have if you live with obesity. So that's kind of what they're offering as a difference to just kind of like, well, why don't you just get a bit of willpower and eat less and move more? Because it really isn't that simple. There's a lot of biology and physiological responses going on that you need to overcome as well.
Would you take this weight loss jab, Sarah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that's kind of, when people say to me, like, what does the future look like? For me, it's kind of, I'm looking forward to these newer treatments coming forward because it's giving people with obesity hope that actually what we can do is live healthier versions of ourselves by maintaining and kind of working on some of the fundamental physiological things going on in our body. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, in a sense, Ben, we pose the wrong question, don't we? Because it's not a wonder drug in one sense. It is an additional support for people who really have an obesity problem.
I think as long as that is heavily emphasised, and I think as well a problem with the NHS that's suffering with this obesity epidemic on their hands is they don't really even have the resources, in my opinion, to go through the level of psychological evaluation and give that support during this process, which is what concerns me. And, you know, people, I mean, I used to weigh over 300 pounds and it's a very dark, desperate place, and you do cling on to hope. And, you know, as Sarah said, it does give you hope. But ultimately, I just really feel that people need to be made very much aware of the level of hard work that it's going to take, even when using something like this. Because as I say, appetite is one thing, but with a lot of people that suffer from serious eating disorders, people will go well beyond appetite. And that's not because they're hungry. They'll continue eating for other reasons. So it's just really, really important, as I say, about mental health that it gets addressed. And, you know, it's just one tool in a big toolbox that you need to basically use or can use.
Ben, do you think it needs to be a more holistic approach? Because, I mean, whilst you're paying for injections or perhaps getting them on the NHS and you're happy to inject yourself, I mean, that's one thing, the weight's falling off. But you're actually learning nothing, are you, about nutrition and about keeping that weight off?
Yeah, I think another issue that I had, more concern with it is that, okay, so it reduces your appetite and it prevents you from eating as much, as it were. But then again, what are you then going to eat? Because ultimately, if you're in a calorie deficit and you're eating chocolate bars and McDonald's, for example, or you're eating salads or, you know, chicken, your weight loss is still going to happen. And these people need to know that fueling their body with nutrient-dense foods as well, and how you do that is really important. So again, that is really important because I've seen so many people have so-called or go on some called miracle drugs or fad diets, and they just take that almost as a pass to say, oh, isn't that great? I'm not eating as much, so I can just eat whatever I want then. And it does happen. It happens more often than not.
Yeah, but people are desperate, aren't they? But I mean, you must have been there, Sarah. I mean, the miracle drugs and fad diets and all the rest of it, yeah, they sound great. People want them because people are desperate to lose weight. Of course, the older you get, the harder it becomes. And as you say, keeping it off is another matter entirely.
Yeah, and I think we need to question why people are so desperate. And I think a lot of it comes down to the societal pressures that we have on us. You know, I know as someone living with obesity that I'm made to feel different all the time. I'm made to feel like I shouldn't be in this body and I should be in a different body. So I think we need to look at how society views obesity and views people in larger bodies as well, because I think it puts unnecessary pressures on people to suddenly go, I don't want to look like this anymore, so what can I do to change that? And actually what we need to do is focus on people's health. And like Ben said, around making sure people have the education to make sure that they are eating nutritious, dense food, they're eating good food, they're exercising, they're doing all the right things, but doing it in a way that they're not doing it feeling like they're being chastised or blamed or shamed, because that's not helpful to anyone. So I think it needs to have more of a positive message around it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to end on. Ben Smith, Sarah LeBrock, really good to talk to both of you. Thanks very much indeed. I think you've put a different light on it, because, I mean, I look at these things because I'm permanently on a diet.
He is. He's very mean to himself.
But, you know, you've got to look... I mean, I'm nearly 50, and you've got to really try to... You know, I don't want to get to 60 and be fat.
No, well, you wouldn't, 'cause you're very strict with yourself.
But you have to be... And you just think if it takes some of the pressure off, you just think, oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing, as long as there's a holistic approach, and I do think it needs to be coming from a doctor so that you can have it, you know, you can learn about nutrition, you can learn about exercise at the same time, because if you can inject away, but then once you stop, you pile it all back on.
Yeah,
but I don't think, you know, solving an obesity crisis and saving lots of money for the NHS... Perhaps these jabs are the way forward.
If it's another tool in the arsenal,
yes,
then that could be beneficial.
Well, let us know what you think. You'll definitely have a view on that, won't you? gbnews@gbnews.uk.
Up next, what do you make of this? It's a picture of a very young King Charles. There you go. It's a bit of a mugshot, isn't it? It's in the papers. We'll take you through all the details. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Now, there's, of course, only a week to go until the coronation.
Yes.
Are you excited? Are you looking forward to it? If you want to see the King like you've never seen him before, here he is when he's been arrested. Well, no, not strictly true. This is when he was at university, and he was 18 years old in 1967. But it looks like a mugshot, doesn't it? I mean, it's awful. Awful picture.
I think you were correct earlier when you said he had grown into his
He
looks.
has grown into his looks.
Less of a looker.
But there you go. It's nice to see. They've just released that. I don't know who's released it or for why. There you go. It's out there now. What can you do?
The Express has captured a priceless moment that we've been sharing with you this morning of a 2-year-old little boy snatching away the Princess of Wales handbag, a mulberry one, during her trip to the Aberfan Memorial, and then didn't give it back. The Princess of Wales had to continue on her walkabout without her handbag.
Yeah.
She'd eventually get it back.
She got it back eventually.
Good taste, I say.
700 quid's worth of handbag. There you go. There's some really powerful pictures in the Eye this morning from Sudan. British nationals boarding an RAF aircraft in Khartoum.
The Sun has this photo of £1.3 billion submarine, the HMS Anson. Now, this is a peculiar turn of events that's very close to Stephen's heart.
It is.
His local spoons. Classified documents were found there about this submarine. They're found in the bathroom.
In the gents' loo.
In the gents' loo of the spoons. So there you go.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to stumble across in the loos. Of
Anything about submarines is close to my heart because they build so many of them up in Barrow, of course. Have you been on a submarine? My grandparents and uncles all worked on the subs and building the subs and the ships.
That's cool.
Yeah. If you ever go on a submarine, it is you'll have more respect for submariners than you ever thought possible because it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. They're so cramped.
Couldn't be me.
No.
Well, we're joined by assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, and joining her is podcast host Sean McDonald. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Sean, let's start with you, shall we? Safety fears rising in Manchester's gay village.
Yeah, this is absolutely horrific, to be honest. This is the third crowbar attack in Manchester's gay village in the space of about 6 weeks in what's been described as a premeditated and targeted hate crime. I mean, it pretty much just is simply this, that the story it doesn't require much more elaboration. There are homophobic attacks, and I think in instances such as this, as with whether it's religious discrimination or any other sort of targeted hate crime, it requires everybody to stand in complete unison in condemnation of it. I just don't understand what type of oxygen-brained or oxygen-headed moron you have to be carrying this out in the first place. Really, really feel for the people involved. You've had people speaking in Canal Street who are having to change their shifts because they don't feel safe going home. I mean, it's 2023, and I think it shows that this type of discrimination and homophobia is very much insidious and may appear to be under the surface, but it is very clearly is prevalent. And I would say that even one attack, I would describe that as being prevalent, because there should be nothing. I'm quite stunned that we're actually sitting discussing this, to be honest.
Yeah, it's.
But it deserves spotlight, and it deserves people to stand up and say something if you witness it.
Just live and let live. You know, that's all.
Why does it bother you? It's sometimes a bit, you know, a little bit the lady doth protest a little too much. Like, why do you care?
Well,
like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Or is there something a wee bit more beneath the surface that you're uncomfortable with?
Yeah, I think that could be a very valid point.
Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
The irony of going from live and let live to the Telegraph and Joe Biden, Cindy, because there are, and look, and it's a fair point though, because there is concerns that if Joe Biden is re-elected as president, he'll die in office.
Yeah, so he's 80-year-old this year. He's just announced his re-election campaign this week. So if he gets elected, he'll be 86 by the end of his second term. And I had a quick look at the American life expectancy for the average white male, and it's 77. So he's already doing very, very
all right
well.
now, but he doesn't seem in the sort of greatest of health.
No. And the Telegraph has got this amazing story where they did some event recently at the White House for some kids, and, you know, for Take Your Child to Work Day. One kid asked him, you know, what was the last country you went to? And do you remember that Biden was here in Ireland a couple of weeks ago?
How could we forget?
No, he forgot.
Oh, he forgot.
He forgot. He said, I've been to 89. I've met with 89 heads of state so far. So I'm trying to think. Where was the last place I was? It's hard to keep track. This is direct quoting.
Oh, you're joking.
Oh dear.
It doesn't fill you with that. You know, it's nothing against him. This is what happens when you get older, isn't it? It is what happens when you get older. You get a bit
totally
forgetful.
Fine.
But he's the most.
You want to be the president of America?
Yeah.
The most powerful man in the world. It doesn't.
If you get access to the nuclear codes, I would prefer that you remembered where you were last week. I mean, that's just me.
It's a concern, is that you wonder what's motivating him. I mean, if you were his family members, you'd be thinking, look, Dad, Granddad, you're a bit past it now.
Yeah.
Past your prime.
He's wanted it all his life, hasn't he? He's been around since like the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
You can be rude if you're French.
This
is in the Mail.
Yeah, according to Eva Green, she's been awarded £810,000 for a film that was never made. The film was called A Patriot, and it was shut down in 2019. I think it was due to be filming in Ireland. It changed to, I think it was maybe Hertfordshire or somewhere in England anyway. And she had got into, I think she was used as a scapegoat for the film not going ahead. But I think the sort of attack or the defence on her was that messages were leaked in which she had referred to her producer as a moron, and she referred to some crew as peasants, which I felt like really made me laugh, to be honest. It's quite the insult. And she blamed her Frenchness for these messages. Cindy and I actually had a bit of trouble trying to find out what her actual nationality was. I think, Cindy, was her dad Swedish and her mum's French?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's a bit of a weak argument, isn't it? I don't think she is actually French. And I think the judge was like, yeah, you can't
also,
call...
I think it's still rude to call someone a peasant in France.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like such a French 17th century type insult anyway, so, like, is she...
like pre-revolution kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no excuse for being rude.
No,
there's not. Maybe she deserves to win a case.
Do you know what's funny, though? The judge did say, having listened to evidence from the producer, I can see why you would fall out with this guy, which was quite remarkable. So he must be... I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions in his character. I've never met him, but you must be a bit of a rubbish guy if a judge is saying that.
Well,
the judge said that he was patronising, sarcastic and denigrating.
But maybe not a peasant. There you go. We've got to leave it there. Cindy, Sean, thanks very much indeed. See you in the next hour. Coming up, all the strike updates and how best to face the holiday getaway.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here with the latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Bank holiday weekend is here, and lo and behold, it's turning warmer and brighter for many of us, but not for all. Still some cold weather about first thing for Scotland and for the far north of England. A lot of cloud here as well, with an occluded front lingering. Elsewhere, yes, cloudy skies, but a milder start to the day for southern and western parts of the country. A lot of mist and murk covering some western coasts, and some outbreaks of rain across western parts of the UK as well, first thing. Now, as temperatures rise, the cloud will bubble up. We'll see some brighter spells developing in the south and the west, but also as temperatures rise, we'll see showers developing. Northern Ireland, parts of Wales into the West Midlands, greatest risk for some slow-moving thunderstorms, and some hail could cause some problems into the afternoon. But away from the showers, actually feeling pleasantly warm in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius, whilst Scotland and the north of England, well, here we're just going to see 8 to 12 Celsius and a lot of cloud cover. Fairly extensive clouds then on Saturday night, with outbreaks of more persistent rain developing in western parts. Drier towards the southeast, a few mist patches for southeast England, and another frosty one for the far north of Scotland. But as we begin Sunday, for many it's a cloudy and mild start to the day. Outbreaks of rain moving through Scotland first thing, affecting western England as well as Wales and Northern Ireland. As temperatures rise, once again, we'll see showers rather than longer spells of rain. And again, it's northern and western parts of England and Wales and Northern Ireland where we'll see the slow-moving thunderstorms. The southeast, 19, 20 Celsius, largely dry with sunny spells. But it's in the southeast where we'll see those showers on Monday morning, as well as into the afternoon, with slow-moving downpours. And away from those showers, temperatures up to 21 Celsius.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have.
No one will be cancelled.
Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Saturday the 29th of April. Today, what are they playing at? As hospitals cry out over patient safety, the union that has organised the latest nurses' strike is now scrambling to provide their own cover. Now, you thought the COVID nightmare was over, you might have to think again. Academics are urging the return of masks, more vaccines, and yes, it's all because there is a new variant.
Can we jab away the flab? As another controversial weight loss injection is set to be approved for use in the UK, we debate the battle of the bulge. Move over vinyl revival. We're in the era of the cassette comeback. We'll be looking at the hype behind the latest trend in music.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello. This is Breakfast on GB News.
See, I'm not convinced by a cassette comeback.
No, I think I don't agree with that either. I think it's vinyls, all the hipsters buying
Yeah,
vinyls.
the hipsters. I mean, I just like streaming stuff now.
Oh, it's very modern, is our Steve.
I'm very,
he loves
very
to
modern.
stream.
Very modern. But I mean, I used to buy, I remember buying cassette singles, and I had loads of, I always bought albums on cassette because it was just easier. You can play them in the car and all that sort of thing. But it's different now, isn't it? You know, the quality goes, they get snagged, if the tape gets twisted.
Well, people don't play cassettes now, do they?
No, but it's coming back.
No, I don't believe that.
I mean, it's nice and I like the nostalgia. I like it. I think it's all down to Stranger Things.
Do you?
know, if you
all
watch
the
that
80s.
Because that's set in the 80s. That's a Netflix show, if you're not familiar with it. Set in the 80s. It's very, very good. But they've all got cassettes in that.
So it's all that retro stuff.
I think the
coming back.
retro stuff. But I think in terms of practicality, cassettes are not...
It's not the one, is it?
Not the be-all.
They do get very tangled.
Do you remember cassettes so much?
Not so much, no. CDs were my thing.
I remember when CDs came out, the excitement was unbelievable.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, CDs. I do still like the odd CD in the car.
Yeah.
You wouldn't agree with me. It's very modern, this one.
I haven't got a CD player in the car.
Well,
no.
yeah.
None of that. No, it's all
Streams
gone.
everything. It's all on Spotify.
It's
Do you
all
use Spotify?
I don't use Spotify.
Oh, do you not?
No.
Where are you streaming from then?
But to be fair, I don't really play a lot of music now.
What do you listen to when you're driving?
An audiobook.
Oh, you're so cute.
Put an audiobook on, because I'm ancient. I love it, though.
That is so cute.
I love it. I have Alexa in the car now. She's built into the car, would you believe? She gets everywhere. So that's very... So you can play music with that, obviously.
Yeah.
So you can listen to the odd tune. But no, cassettes, I'm not entirely
You're
convinced
not gone
by.
on. Let us know. Are you still listening to cassettes? Do you listen to CDs? Do you use vinyls? Let us know.
So you use vinyls.
Use vinyls? Play vinyls.
Wear vinyls.
Buy vinyls?
My brother's big
GBNews.uk.
My brother's big into his vinyl. He loves it all.
Oh, yeah?
He says its sound quality is much better, much richer, much more crackly.
I think if you're a music lover, it's quite cool, isn't it, to have vinyl?
I
Vinyl
still think it's all
collection,
retro.
what do you call it?
But anyway, let us know what you think.
Yep. GBViews, GBnews.uk. Now, the union behind the nurses' strike is working with health leaders to provide staff during its own walkout.
Now, this is after hospitals, including Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital, issued warnings over patient safety.
Yes, the strike, which will start tomorrow evening at 8 p.m, was cut in half from 2 days to 1 after the High Court ruled the walkout broke ballot rules.
Let's talk to reporter from Politico, Stefan Boscher, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning. What are we to make of this? I mean, it seems a little bit like the RCN's floundering.
It does a bit, and it's quite a strange one. We've never really seen union leaders try to get their own scabs off the picket line to walk past the picket line. But here we are. We're in a situation where there has been waning, support for these strikes within the RCN, within the nursing, the nursing union, and we saw the last time they balloted that they only just by a very small amount decided to go on strike again. And with the new ballot coming next week, and that ballot decides if nurses want to strike for the next 6 months. There's a real crunch point, I mean, they'll have to decide if they want to strike for another 6 months and they want to go through that financial hardship, or they say we'll take the government's deal, a deal which Pat Cullen, the RCN chief, has previously recommended they take. And I think that it is a really sort of crunch time for them to decide how long they want to take this forward.
Yeah, very awkward for the RCN, isn't it, at the moment, especially Pat Cullen. She accepted that deal on behalf of the union. She recommended it to her members, and then her members, by a very slim majority, said it wasn't good enough. So having already told the government that it seemed as though it was a good deal, now has to go back and ask for more money. It's quite awkward, isn't it?
It is, and it would seem that it wouldn't give her a very good hand in negotiations as well. If she's already said, I quite like this deal and I've told my members to vote for it, she comes back to the table with a mandate from her members to renegotiate. It's very unlikely she's going to be able to get more from the government, because they can see where the wind's blowing, I think. They can see that it's already very close. These votes, that there's already a lot of support waning within the RCN. And I think that the government at this point, their strategy is just to hold out and hope that very soon enough will cave, enough will flip to take the offer, which is an offer of around 5% plus some, lump sum cash backdated. So it's obviously well below what inflation is, and it still will be a real wage cut in, for nurses. But it is probably, around similar what people in the private sector are seeing right now.
But next week we're expecting the NHS group that looks at pay to implement this, aren't we? So, those RCN nurses are going to get their 5% plus their 6% backdated lump sum. Whether they're on strike or not, whether they approve of this or not, it's likely that they're going to get that. And again, that takes more wind out of their sails, doesn't it?
You would think so, because there'd be increasing pressure to accept the deal. Other medical unions are accepting it. They now are at a point where they're losing a lot of their own wages, every time they go on strike. And I think that their resistance will start to wear down. They've obviously come from a point where they wanted something in the vicinity of 15, 16%, something that they were never going to get. They're now, at a point where a lot of them will probably say that they'd rather take the gains and move forward, having made their point. And I think that there will also be, for some of them, there will probably be a conscious part in this, because the strikes, every time they happen, are getting worse. They're now affecting intensive care units. They're now affecting cancer patient treatments. They're now affecting the Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital. So the longer they go on, the worse they get and the more areas they cover. So I think that, that may very well have a large impact on what nurses think.
And we're now facing this remarkable thing, really, where nurses are planning their own cover, organising their own cover for them to go out on strike. And that is a U-turn, isn't it, Stefan? Because they previously said there'll be no exceptions to that rule. Why the U-turn? Do you think it is this threat of waning public support? They don't want to see the sort of disruption that these strikes will inevitably cause?
I would imagine so, because there has been very strong public support for nurses in these strikes. And I think that's particularly salient after COVID, which, a lot of people saw the sort of great lengths that people in the NHS went to keep everyone safe, and the sort of great work that they did during this period. And I think that everyone agreed that they deserve a pay rise of some sort. But now, as it drags on, as people see NHS waiting lists, back up even further, as they see all sorts of areas getting affected, like the ICU and cancer units, I think that public support is waning. Or, I think if it's not now, it will be soon. And they're obviously doing things to try to counter that.
OK. Stefan, really good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. I just think it's going to be fascinating to see, and quite how we get a poll on public opinion on this. I don't know whether anyone's out there doing it at the moment, one of these polling companies. They may well be. But I've always said, maybe I'm wrong, but I've always said that any sort of strike action can only go on for as long as the public basically support it. Because otherwise it just causes huge problems with a miners' strike. As soon as public support disappears and then the families start fighting and all the rest of it, it becomes hugely problematic. And so I wonder with this, And nurses, the angels of the NHS, as they're often perceived, and look, let's not criticise them. They do amazing work, and I get a lot of help from them. I'm type 1 diabetic. I'm always in the hospital having checkups and all the rest of it, and I work with some amazing nurses. But, you know, public sympathy is an issue. Mind you, out of my nursing team, they haven't been on strike.
Have they not?
No.
No. Well, this is going to be the most wide-ranging, isn't it? I mean, the Times saying today that polling shows at the moment there is still significant public sympathy for both teachers and NHS workers. That's what the Times says. Graham doesn't agree, though.
No,
says Pat Cullen is wrong to say that the people support the strikes. What people say when they're asked and what they really think is not the same. The union chiefs have really messed this one up, suggesting that polling perhaps isn't indicative of how people are actually feeling. Let us know what you think about the nurses' strikes.
See, what I find slightly hypocritical is like with teachers, and again, I'm passionate about teachers. I mean, as are you.
We're both offspring of teachers.
Offspring of teachers, and, you know, teachers get a very rough deal and all the rest of it. But supporting teachers striking when people are then moaning about their kids not being in school during the pandemic just seems odd to me, because that's keeping your kids out of school.
Yeah.
I don't know. My mother was a member, it's a union that I don't know if it exists anymore, Professional Association of Teachers, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, but it was a non-strike union, because there were strikes in the 80s when I was at secondary school. But she was part of a non-strike union, so she doesn't agree with the striking with teachers. Or she didn't then. She might become more militant now, I don't know.
I think there's 4 different teaching unions looking at going on strike now. That's the latest lines. Maybe it's one of those.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think anyway. gbnews@gbnews.uk. This has got us talking this morning. It's about barbecues.
Oh, yes, thank you.
50% of women say they're better at barbecuing than men. Mankind, the final humiliation, says the Daily Star. Stephen seems to think men do it best when it comes to barbecuing. I think women do the lion's share of the work when it comes to a barbecue.
Yes, but
men
not,
just fit back.
Not the actual barbecuing, though. You're talking about all the
barbecue,
the sides, the side salads, all that stuff that nobody eats. The stuff that you spend hours making and then gets chucked away at the end of the evening.
No, I'm not talking just about the side salad and the potato salad, as important as they are. I'm talking about the event of the barbecue, having people round. Women do everything. You do the shopping, the hosting, the laying out of things, the condiments, the sides,
this is about the cooking,
the cutlery,
which is the important
the washing
bit.
up. Men do the flipping.
It's all you know.
Maybe.
It's all these side salads, potato salads.
Which is important, Stephen.
You throw it out at the end, don't you? You don't want any of that. So that's no excuse. You just stop wasting your time doing stuff that nobody wants.
No, well, I would
just have a
disagree with
sausage.
that. I disagree with that. I'd say people really like the side salads. Phil says, hi, Stephen. Listen, get the charcoal white, cook anything that you need, vegetation, I was about to say. That could be interesting. Vegetarian, or in my case, steak and a shed load of iced beer. Enjoy the one day every year when the sun shines here in Bonnie, Scotland.
Yeah, lovely.
Good morning programme, by the way. Oh, good morning. Good morning programme, by the way.
It's a good morning programme.
Good morning programme.
Good morning programme.
You are now on the list of the guys I want to have a cold beer with. Well, that's very kind,
nice
Phil.
Cold beer.
Not for me. I'd have a gin and tonic.
Would you? There you go. But no, you see, that's the other thing. Do women...
What are you going to go with now? Oh, dear. Where are we going with this?
Well, no, I'm only going... I'm not misogynistic.
No?
I'm only going with past experience in my life.
All right.
Which is when women have involved cooking anything with coals, they've chucked it on when it's far too hot, and so everything just gets burnt on the outside and raw on the inside, rather than letting everything go white, as Phil quite correctly says.
Right. OK. So in your experience, women can't barbecue?
That's in my experience.
Would you say somewhat limited...
Sorry, Mother.
Experience.
Sorry, Mother.
He's being very mean to you today. What's your mum?
Linda.
Linda.
Sorry, Mum.
Being very mean to you today, Linda.
But no, so it's all about it being cooked through and cooking it properly, letting the coals, as Phil said, go completely white, lighting them a good hour beforehand, all that sort of thing.
Anyway, let us know what you think about that. Do you agree? 50% of women apparently think they're better at barbecuing than men. Men, have your say as well. Is it a man's job? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
You'd only moan if men said, I've got all the lads coming around for a barbecue. Will you get going on it? Start cooking the sausages. You'd moan then.
No. But I also think, yeah, women do it too. As with everything, women do most of the job.
And do it better.
And do it better. As with most things in life.
Well, let's know what you think.
And we'll leave it at that.
Yes, it is 8:14. Also today, Labour's promising to invest in more teachers who are specialists in their subject if they win the next election. The Shadow Education Secretary says schools are scrambling to fill roles, meaning there aren't high standards for all children. And we'll talk to her later in the programme.
The Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end today. Oliver Dowden says the decision was made after a decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, British forces have rescued more than 1,500 people.
First Minister of Scotland is leading a day of campaigning in Dundee today to mark a month since he became leader. Humza Yousaf has had a bit of a difficult start to his time in charge. The arrests of two former executives in the SNP. However, ahead of his visit today, he's assured supporters that party membership is on the rise.
Do you know what I saw yesterday?
Oh, what?
Loads of red, white and blue bunting being put up in my local area. And also, I think you'd only describe them as like posies, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Like on the lamp post.
Oh, nice.
Quite nice. Kind of Union Jack posies.
They won't last a week.
I hope nobody pulls them down or anything. I did think it was quite early to put them up. But anyway, it looks fantastic. So if you... Maybe they are, yes. If you've got anything like that in your local area, do send in pictures, because I just love all of the excitement building up.
One of the villages I drive through on the way to work have got Coronation plaques up on all the lampposts, so...
I love it.
It's nice, isn't it?
And when did they go up?
I only noticed them this morning.
Oh, there you go. Must have been a bank holiday effort
in
the local communities. Do send in your pictures if you're seeing those kind of things in your local area. I love it all. And that's because the King's coronation is just around the corner, just 1 week to go. But King Charles III will have a greater privacy than afforded to previous monarchs during one of the most sacred moments of the coronation.
Michael Cole, royal correspondent, can tell us more. Michael, in what way will the King get some more privacy?
Yeah, well, the anointing is very, very important during the ritual of the coronation, the most sacred, as you've just said, and the most intimate. And when the Queen was anointed in 1953, she just had a little canopy over her head, very, very similar to the chuppah, which is used in Jewish wedding ceremonies. The bridal pair stand under it. So it looked a little bit like that. And at that point, the BBC cameras, who uniquely had been allowed in for this coronation, looked away because the monarch's hands, head and breast are anointed with the holy oil. Now, the king has made a change in this. He's commissioned a very, very beautiful screen which will enclose him on 3 sides. It's been made by 150 needlework specialists at the Royal School of Needlework at Hampton Court, a place I've actually visited when it is fascinating. And it's beautifully designed based on a window at the Chapel Royal in St James's Palace. And essentially, it's a beautiful tree, and each of the leaves, 54 leaves, bears the name of one of the countries of the Commonwealth. So this will enclose him while this ceremony, the anointing, goes on, and he will then be wearing a sort of simple white shirt. This is a very key point to it, and only after the anointing and the crowning and the expressions of loyalty, fealty, will he actually become king. A very important moment, the most important moment in the whole of his reign, be it long or short. That is the key thing. We won't be seeing it, but we'll know it's going on behind that beautiful screen.
And Michael, this is just one of the many ways in which we are going to see differences, aren't we, between King Charles III and his late mother's coronation all that time ago. He is keen, isn't he, to get his own stamp on things?
And he's doing it, very much so. It's all very much slimmed down. He wants to concentrate on the direct line of succession, which, of course, is the Prince of Wales, Prince William, and then his children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. and simplify it to a large extent. The coronation service when the Queen was crowned in June the 2nd, 1953, and I remember it terribly well. I was 10 years old. I won't give you a blow-by-blow, but I watched it on a 12-inch black and white screen with 17 other people who were crowded into the back room of our little house in the London suburbs. It's going to be different. The service itself will be 2 hours instead of the 3 hours with the Queen. And I don't know how they managed it last time, but they got 8,000 people within Westminster Abbey. Well, I think there were stands built and so on. This time it'll be just over 2,000, 2,300. And at the last time, every single peer, viscounts, dukes, earls, were all allowed in their robes and crowns. That and coronets, that will not happen this time. And it's a very much more diverse service with members of the various ethnic groups in this country fully represented, and the major religions as well. I mean, this is an Anglican service. That is absolutely central to it. The coronation oath requires the king to declare his loyalty to God, to the people, and to the Anglican Church. But other religions and churches will be fully represented there, and in the courtiers who will be paying attention to him and providing various moments in the service when they come forward to pay their own respects to the newly crowned Queen and King, of course, because Queen Camilla will also be crowned.
Can I just rewind you 4 minutes, Michael? Because I don't know, it intrigues me. I don't know what our viewers and listeners as well, hopefully so. You were talking about the anointing and what have you, and that is the point where Charles really becomes king. Well, what is he now? What is he now then? Because I've often wondered what the difference is between sort of the accession to the throne on the death of one monarch, and then the difference between that and when someone is actually crowned.
Yeah. Well, the Queen is dead. Long live the King. Yes, of course, on September the 8th, the sad day, the Queen died. He became king. But this, in liturgical terms, is the moment of the crowning. And that is terribly, terribly important, because in centuries past, this was not just an idle ceremony. It was a ceremony to establish loyalty. Loyalty is the theme that runs through it. And it was indeed a matter of life and death. He had to make sure that everybody there was on his side. And that's why they kneel and they swear their oath of fealty to him, because it was very important. He had to know where his buddies were, and he had to keep the enemies outside. The enemies these days are a little bit different, but they're still there. So this is very, very important. Of course, he was king from the very moment, but this actually, in the eyes of God, makes sure that he is the rightly crowned and anointed king. And there is a sort of an element of consent in it, which you wouldn't get with the Romanovs in Russia or the Hohenzollerns in Prussia or the Habsburgs in Vienna, because first of all, he has to accept the oath. He has to accept the duty. He has to show his loyalty to the church, the people, and God himself. And then those people there present have to express their loyalty to him. It's not democratic in any sense, but there is that element of consent, so that when he is fully crowned and anointed, there's no doubt about it. He is the chosen by God to be king, not just of this realm, the United Kingdom, but of 14 overseas realms, many of them having adopted the Westminster system of government, which is where the king reigns but does not rule, where Parliament is sovereign, but it works rather well and has done for generations.
OK, Michael Kroll, really good to have you on the programme with us. Thank you very much.
Are you excited? Are you prepped?
Yeah.
Are you ready to roll?
Well, it's 1 week, as you said at the beginning, and about 3 hours. And of course, I shall be with you down there. I hope wherever you are. I got the schedule yesterday. You're all over the place. I think you're at Canada Gate. You're in other places. So I shall be around. It is exciting. I mean, I remember the fervour that swept through the country, what people did. In our little cul-de-sac of 12 houses, 12 families decorated their houses overall. There was no passing traffic. There was nobody to see it. They were just doing it to express their patriotism. And every single primary school had an event. That was my first brush with the news. At Perrin Road Primary School, I dressed up in a costume made by my mother as a beefeater, and I was in the local paper. So that was my first brush with fame. Little did I know then that I would be with you on GB News all this time later in this excellent morning programme.
Well, look, and hopefully you'll be dressed as a beefeater when we see you next Saturday. Fabulous stuff. Michael, good to see you.
Listen, I mean, you were talking about beefeaters, and of course, and I heard all the wonderful stuff you were saying about barbecues. Now, what is it about men that they think that only they can burn meat? Perhaps Ellie can express that one, because there's something they don't cook for 364 days of the year. On barbecue day, they suddenly become experts in burning meat. Isn't that correct?
I'm just as confused as you are, Michael, honestly. Women do it best, that's what I say.
Yes, well, you've let the side down, Michael. I may rescind your accreditation for Saturday, but good to see you.
Michael.
Thanks very much indeed.
Oh, it's all very exciting, isn't it? 1 week to go.
1 week to go. Will be nice. Mind you, between now and then, it's bank holiday weekend, and the RAC is predicting the biggest getaway on the road since 2016.
Yes, drivers and train passengers have been warned they face congestion and disruption over the holiday, with motoring organisations forecasting the biggest travel movement for 7 years.
Let's head over to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, who's on the M1 in Nottingham. It's going to be grim on the roads, Will.
Good morning. Yes, it's only when you're standing directly above the M1 that you realise just how noisy it can be. It seems a little bit quieter right now compared to maybe when I'm heading out to a story at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Of course, it is the weekend, and a lot of people that are getting out for the bank holiday, they'll be well used to this by now. But what they won't be used to is back-to-back bank holidays, double traffic trouble, as the RAC calls it, because you've got this weekend where you're going to see 17.2 million leisure journeys made over this weekend alone. But then to follow, because of the special bank holiday for the King's Coronation, you're going to have another 14 million journeys that are going to be made. Now, of course, next weekend it's going to be a little bit quieter compared to this bank holiday. That's because everybody is hopefully going to be at home watching GB News, watching the coronation on the television. A lot of people will be crammed around the TV set, so they won't be going out to the seaside or trying to go on a city break. But the RAC is still warning people to expect all of the things that you would expect if you were going to be getting away during this period. Now, the bit of a blessing that you can say at this point, if you can be granted a blessing when you're expecting motorway misery, is that for this weekend at least, the bulk of the delays will have already passed. The RAC says that particularly Friday afternoon and Friday evening, everybody that was trying to get away really early on Friday afternoon, they would have met all of the commuters on the road. So if you've realised that your journey was taking a little bit longer home from work yesterday on a motorway like the M5 or the M6 or the M25, that's because all of the people trying to get away for a bank holiday met with all the other commuters. So this should have been the worst of it so far for this weekend. Today is going to be the peak, though, 2.7 million journeys today. Of course, it isn't just the roads. There's going to be some pressure on the rail services and airports as well. Airports, you're going to see the usual busyness that you can expect for a bank holiday getaway. For the rails, though, Network Rail has scheduled 600 or so different planned maintenance works all the way throughout the country, and London Euston is going to be closed on Sunday. So you can expect that it is going to be quite busy during this period. Stephen and Ellie.
People to try and tackle getting about this weekend. What's the advice, Will, for people hitting the roads or indeed trying to rely on public transport?
Yes, well, it's the thing that the Boy Scouts have been telling us for generations. It's that old saying, be prepared. The RAC says fill your car up with plenty of fuel before you go. Nobody likes being broken down on the side of the road simply because they've run out of fuel. They say check your tyres as well and make sure that you've got enough engine fluid and that kind of thing. And the final one is if you are going to go out on the road and you've got a bit of an old banger, a beat up car, make sure you've got plenty of water and snacks in the car, because it's going to be 21 degrees in some parts of the country. That's warm for this time of the year, so it might be a little bit hot in your car if you break down on the side of the road. But of course, it's really be prepared. Make sure that you've got everything that you need if you're going to be making a big journey this bank holiday or next bank holiday, instead of watching the Coronation at home.
Yeah.
OK, well, thank you so much for bringing us that advice. And the latest from on top of the M1, it does seem to be moving pretty freely behind you.
It's all right at the minute, but it's nice and early.
Let's keep it that way, please. That'd be good.
Anyway, if you're heading anywhere, let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We've got lots of sports coverage in the moment. Very latest on what's happening in the world of sport with Aidan McGee. This is Breakfast on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
Let's get the lowdown on the sport with Aidan McGee. Good morning.
Good to be with you.
Morning.
Who owns Man United?
Well, at the moment, it's still the Glazers, but we had the deadline
But not
set
for long.
by them. Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, there's a school of thought that says that they don't want to actually sell at all. I mean, it depends if the bid is agreeable. I mean, we saw last night the deadline was 10 o'clock, so this was the third round of bidding. Remember, they put the club up for sale back in November, so this has been quite protracted, given that we're almost in the summer. Excuse me.
If they don't want to sell, why would they put it up for sale?
Well, yeah, that's a good point, and why would they make it so protracted as well? I mean, you've got the Rain Group who sold Chelsea. But I think what piqued their interest last summer was the fact that Chelsea went for around about, £2.5 billion. We've never really seen football clubs in this country worth that amount of money. This would be, if United is valued at £6 million and the Glazers want, if they get £6 million, even if they get £5 million, then it would eclipse the deal that's going through at the moment for the Washington Commanders in NFL, which is £4.8 billion. So the third round of the third deadline was last night. We saw Sheikh Jassim's bid, the Qatari bid. He's a former chairman of the Qatari Bank.
Does that not fall foul of the new rules?
Yeah, but the new rules they're not exactly watertight, it has to be said.
About sort of...
No, I mean, they just said, oh, he's an independent bidder, when really he's
Well, he's not.
No, of course he's not, but the Premier League just probably don't ask as many questions as they should.
Oh, right.
But they may use it as an opportunity to force a bit of, throw their authority around a little bit to persuade the government they don't need a regulator, but that's by the by. So 10 o'clock last night, we saw a £5 billion bid. I said £5 million. That's what Michael Knighton bid for it in 1989. You know that?
Is
Nearly
it?
got it for £5 million. Anyway, I'm diverging, not diversing.
Digressing.
That's the one, yeah. So last night we saw a bid of £5 billion up front. So that would also include £1 billion on top of that to clear the debt, another £1 billion to invest in the team. So you would assume that would be around, to give a complete refresh of the squad, probably £500 or £600 million. And then you've got the remaining money to invest in infrastructure projects. So Old Trafford needs an upgrade. They may even consider moving to a completely different stadium. If you look at Tottenham, all right, it was in London, so the land's more expensive, but that cost them 5 years ago £1 billion. So you would think with the kind of structure that United would want, it would be in that ballpark. The training ground at Carrington, just off the M60, needs upgrading as well. And they're going to invest in the area of Manchester, much the same as Abu Dhabi did with Manchester City back in 2008 when they took over, to kind of get involved with the locals a bit more. So there's that bid that's gone in, and then you've got the rival bid from Ineos, Sir James Radcliffe, grew up on a council estate, Man United fan. He did bid for Chelsea last year, actually, we should say that. But we're not actually sure of the amount of his bid, what it's worth monetarily, but it's going to be for a controlling interest, just over 50%, probably 51%. And then it would allow the Glazers to stay in there with 20%, which wouldn't please the supporters, but it's the Glazers who have to be convinced here. They're the kiddies with the drum.
Yeah.
They're the ones who have to sell.
Yeah,
Who do the fans want?
Oh, the fans want the Qatar bid. I mean, this
Do
is the
they?
thing. Oh, yeah, they do. I mean, they may not say it openly on Twitter, but, or social media, but a lot of them do, because that means that's the bid that's going to see the most investment in players. And it's players that they need to catch Manchester City and catch Arsenal and Liverpool and the other teams around them. Don't forget, it's 10 years since they won the league title. They've not won a major trophy in 10 years. They've won the Europa League, which is a second-line European trophy as things stand right now. But that would allow the Glazers to stay in. For all they know, that United could get even bigger in the next 5-10 years. There's every expectation it will. They're back in the Champions League next year. The revenue streams are back up to full tilt. But the big thing is the stadium. It does need an upgrade. It's not really had significant work on it done on it for about 20 years now. There's leaks in the roof and that kind of stuff. But there's even talk they may even move away completely from Old Trafford and find another site within Manchester. But that's time-consuming. It means you're going to... Oh, another thing about the Glazers, one of the reasons they want to sell is because the cost of borrowing is so high.
Yeah, that's true. Now, look, there may be some snooker widows watching this morning, and if that's true, if you are, you've been proved right, because the snooker was so boring yesterday that one of the semi-finals got called off early.
So we had two semi-finals. The second one, they're going concurrently, actually. Mark Selby and Mark Allen. Mark Selby's a four-time world champion, but it was just become... No one set out to make it boring. It just became so tactical because the stakes are so high. It happens now and again, and at 6 o'clock, everyone got kicked out. Because even with 3 more frames to go, they allocated three more frames. And you call it... In golf, you'd call it slow play. And Stephen Hendry described it as a dark cloud across the sport. He doesn't really want to see that kind of snooker, but he's been involved in tactical battles himself before. He understands how it works, And so it's not particularly enthralling, that one, not doing much to the sport. I do feel that this World Championship is getting a bit more attention just because of what happened with Just Stop Oil a couple of weeks ago. But in the other semi-final, we're seeing a bit of a story develop. It's Xi Wei, who's from China. He's bidding to become the youngest ever world champion. He's ranked world number 80, and he's winning 14-10 at the moment against the Belgian Luca Bretzel, who put out Ronnie O'Sullivan earlier in the competition. But at 20 years old, Xi Wei could become the youngest. I think Hendry would have been about 21, I think, when he did it in the late 80s, when he usurped Steve Davis. So, yeah, good. And we're underway again from 10 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, oh, good on
At the Crucible.
At the Crucible. Well, it is iconic.
It is.
Lovely stuff. Aidan, thanks. We'll catch up with you later
Absolutely.
on. Now, secret documents about Britain's nuclear submarines have been left in, well, you won't believe where. We'll tell you next. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel, sort of find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8:43. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is assistant editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, and the podcast host, Sean McDonald. Good morning to you both. Sean, we're going to start with this horrific story of a body of the fiancé of a murdered pregnant teacher up in Scotland.
Yeah, this is massive news. This is in the outskirts, just north of Glasgow. The body the body of Morel Sturrock, aged 35, she's 29 weeks pregnant, was found at her home, and then the police were looking to speak to at great haste with her partner, who was identified as 36-year-old David Yates. I think the search went through Mugdock Country Park, which will be familiar to people in that part of the country, and his body was then pulled from the reservoir. So it's just an absolutely horrific state of affairs. I feel like with these stories, there's always an emphasis placed on the man or the perpetrator. I think in this instance, we should be remembering Morel Sturrock, primary teacher, who's, complete unrestricted sympathy go out to her family and friends and loved ones.
It's just very, very difficult to get your head around what on earth could have happened here.
Yeah, there's likely to be a lot of speculation. I've seen a lot of social media chatter. I think people that I know personally knew the guy Yates. There's been, a lot of speculation. It's probably unwise to speculate at this point. I think we can put two and two together and arrive at 4.
Yes.
But until such times as there's an official police statement that's put out, will we ever know? Unlikely, and that's probably going to add to a lot of the heartache and horror for the family and friends. You'll never have answers, and it's just awful on all counts. And full sympathy go to her family.
And those poor children in that classroom, I mean, imagine having to break that news that their teacher isn't coming back.
Yeah, awful stuff.
Yeah.
Cindy, let's have a look at the Sun. You've been itching to get to this one all morning. HMS Anson.
Yes.
New submarine built in Barrow.
Yes, which you would know much more about. I didn't know you were coming from a submarine family.
Yeah. So yes.
Very important to the local economy, so I hear.
Yeah, well, it is, but it is. And the DDH, the Devonshire Dock Hall, where all these things are built, it's a huge part of Barrow now.
Anyway, someone who works there clearly was a bit too keen, so left these training documents that basically describe where things are on a submarine. He left them in a Wetherspoons toilet, and then on a Saturday night, someone else found them on the floor of the gents. So these are classified documents. We don't know who's left them just yet, presumably. But actually, a similar case of previous civil servants, they've had their security revoked temporarily because, it is pretty bad, thank God it's only training documents this time and not, super secret plans or something like that.
I love the fact they've quoted a former submarine captain, Commander Ryan Ramsey, who says, "It looks like someone has taken these off the boat to study. It's good to see their commitment to training, but the pub is probably the wrong place." So,
especially on a Saturday night. You didn't even come from work at that point.
Well, they might have done. But it was all about pneumatics or something on the... I think you probably have to be an expert to understand it.
I've had the fear and anxiety many a time after a night on the booze, but never quite like whatever government officials lost that. Imagine waking up and realising, where did I leave those submarine documents? Oh, in a Wetherspoons.
In the spoons.
Bizarre. If any Russian spies are watching this, Barry and Furness just go off on a pub crawl.
Oh,
Scoop in the spoons, Lou. Yeah.
Worried about spies in Barrow, Dear me.
Honestly.
Sean, a right-wing extremist has blown up his own kitchen, according to the Times, making gunpowder. I lack sympathy.
Yeah, I lack sympathy. This wee gimp is obviously as bright as a blackout. His name's Von Dolphin. He was then 19. He branded himself a dangerous lunatic. He had an absolute roaster of a guy. He caused a fireball in the kitchen of his house in Walsall, West Midlands, where he was living with his aunt. He was found guilty of 6 counts of possessing articles useful for terrorism, 2 counts of disseminating terrorist material, and 2 of possessing explosive substances, and 1 charge of possessing a firearm. When interviewed by police, he told them that he had been making a powder from matches, and his defence was just branded laughable, and among other words, complete and utter nonsense. So, quite funny, but also Pretty alarming, isn't it?
It's actually, it's nice to be able to laugh at his expense,
yes,
frankly, but it's still serious. I mean, if he'd got away with anything,
yeah,
can you imagine?
We had Chief Superintendent Mark Payne, head of counter-terrorism for Police West Midlands, said his mindset is one of a dangerous individual, trying to equip himself with stuff to be able to do serious harm to those who didn't agree with him.
Has he been sentenced?
Yeah, he's been sentenced on May the 11th, and unsurprisingly, his bedroom is decorated with Nazi regalia.
Yeah.
So I hope there'll be a few people having a wee word with him in jail. Let's see. I'm sure he'll come up against some people that won't be too sympathetic to Nazis.
I should think so.
No tolerance for Nazis, I'm afraid.
Well, no, good. That's quite a healthy approach to have, I should think.
Yes. Cindy, let's go, a bit of a different story now. In The Guardian, apparently Cleopatra had white skin.
Yes, and, this is Egypt, the Egyptian authorities saying this. Egyptian Antiques Ministry has published a lengthy statement saying that Cleopatra had white skin. And the reason they had to do that...
Know?
Well, hold on. So the reason they had to do that is because there's a new Netflix documentary coming out where Cleopatra has been cast as a black woman. And, obviously... throughout history, there's been massive problems of erasure, of, people's real skin colours. So Netflix thought, Cleopatra, African queen, must be black. But actually, various historians, including now the Egyptian authorities, have said, actually, she wasn't black. She was actually, because of the way that the Greek and Roman empires were at the time, the links between countries like Persia, between the Phoenicians, was such that it was actually, she was probably more of a Middle Eastern kind of appearance.
So not actually white in that sense either. That's
not
a bit of a misleading headline.
No, not necessarily. But, they say that bas reliefs and statues of Queen Cleopatra show that she's got European traits as well. I mean, it was such a mixing pot at that point anyway of world history. I just think it's so funny that, in this desire to have representation, you then become historically inaccurate to the extent that Egypt, modern-day Egypt, we can't say that they're some kind of keyboard warrior on the right of a debate. They're saying, you're misrepresenting our history.
Yeah. Yeah, no, well, it's interesting. I sort of don't know why we care so much. And why do we care if she's portrayed by a black actress? It doesn't matter.
But that was on purpose by the documentary makers. Yeah. So they cared.
Yeah.
Now they're saying that they don't care. Well, but you did cast them on purpose.
No, fair point. Cindy, Sean, good to see you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, Labour is pledging to invest more in specialist teachers as part of its plan to be the party of high and rising standards.
Well, in a speech to the National Association of Head Teachers, the Shadow Education Secretary will say that the party will focus on breaking down barriers to opportunity.
Well, let's speak now to Bridget Phillipson, who joins us from Westminster. Good morning to you. Really, really good to have you with us. So tell us more. This is a pledge for more teachers. Many people would say this is a very good thing. Where's the money coming from and how's it going to happen?
Hello, good morning. Yes, Labour would end the tax breaks that private schools enjoy, and we'd put that money into delivering more teachers into our classrooms in our state schools. So that's £1.7 billion that will be raised by ending those tax breaks. Parents right now know that there's a real challenge where it comes to specialist teachers in our classrooms. So 1 in 4 physics lessons are not currently being taught by physics specialists, 1 in 10 in the case of maths. And obviously we had the Prime Minister recently saying that he wants young people to study maths until 18, but we don't have enough teachers at the moment to teach the children we currently have in our schools. That has to change. I want to deliver excellence for everyone because I know that education is how we make such a big difference to our children's life chances.
Into some sort of context for us, how have we reached a point where things like physics or French, German, DT, how can these not be taught by someone who's an expert in their field or has had specific training in that field?
Because, excuse me, because over the course of the last decade, the government has presided over recruitment failure and a real challenge across our schools. So what schools are having to do at the moment when they're scrambling to find teachers to cover lessons is to call upon non-specialists to deliver those lessons because of the massive challenges that we're seeing around teacher recruitment and retention. And under Labour, that will change. We'll make sure that all children have access to specialist provision and that we deliver more teachers by ending those tax breaks on private schools.
Yeah, so let's pick you up on that point. So that the tax breaks on private schools, I mean, the spending money is essentially going to be raised from imposing VAT, right, on private schools. So that money would then go into employing 6,500 state school teachers. But there is research from the independent sector which shows 60% of parents would withdraw their children from private schools because they couldn't afford those increased fees. I mean, we're talking about £15,000 a year going up to £18,000 a year. Could this backfire?
Well, of course, that's what the private schools will say, but I'm afraid, frankly, their methodology, the data that they present is flawed and bogus. And if you look at the independent research that's out there, it doesn't back up their claims. The vast majority of children in our country go to state schools. My priority as Secretary of State would be to deliver a brilliant start in life for all of our children, the vast majority of whom go to state schools, and that's my priority.
How do you manage to actually get these people on board, though? Because it's one thing to announce it now. Should you be elected in the next 18 months or so, you're not going to really be able to bring much of this on stream before the next election, are you?
Well, of course, these things do often take time. That can be frustrating, but it's important that we get it right. Just yesterday, I was at the University of Sunderland, where I'm from, speaking with student teachers who are coming through there. They want to feel appreciated and valued for the work they do. They want education to be right at the heart of what we deliver as a country, about how we make our country a better place, a fairer place for everyone, and give our children the best start in life. And I think that, so many of our teachers feel that they've been not appreciated by the government, that their efforts haven't been recognised. And under Labour, that will change. We need to see a big shift in the priority that we attach to education. I know how much of an impact education had in my life, and I know that it is so important where it comes to transforming children's life chances. So a Labour government would deliver a shift in approach right overall to put education at the heart of our country once more, the way it isn't currently.
OK, does that mean then that you would pay the teachers what they want, those teachers who are threatening to go on strike?
Of course, pay is important. I recognise that, as are workload pressures and terms and conditions too. It's that sense of anger that so many teachers feel that they're not appreciated for what they're doing, and I think that's why we're seeing this unprecedented talk of that kind of industrial action. I can't make commitments so far out from an election about what that level of pay would look like under a Labour government. But I'm clear that if I were Secretary of State, I'd be round the table trying to stop that disruption, getting to an agreement, reaching a settlement, hammering that out. There's been a total failure from the government to be serious about negotiation. I mean, after all, we've had 5 secretaries of state in less than 1 year. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about how the government are not taking education seriously and haven't been serious about getting an agreement on pay.
OK. Bridget Phillipson, really good to have you on the programme. Thank you very much for your company. Let us know what you make of what Bridget Phillipson was saying there. Do you agree? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah. Here's your weather.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 29th of April. Today, what are they playing at as hospitals cry out over patient safety? The union that organises the new nurses' strike is scrambling to provide their own cover. You might have thought the COVID nightmare was over, but think again. Academics urge the return of masks, more vaccines, and yes, there is a new variant.
Can we jab away the flab as another controversial weight loss injection is set to be approved for use in the UK? We debate the battle of the bulge. Move away vinyl revival. We're in the era of the cassette comeback. We'll be looking at the hype behind the latest trend in music.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Ellie Costello. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, see, I'm torn now between barbecues, which obviously are best done by men, and what do you listen to when you're having a barbecue? Do you play it on play music off a cassette? Because
yes,
the two
or
sort
a vinyl.
It's all retro-y, sort of. Yeah, but you don't would take your turntable outside, do you?
No, but you might have it in the lounge as you're barbecuing on the patio.
Maybe.
I won't
Maybe.
do that again.
No, don't do that again. I think it's probably illegal. No, it's interesting because the whole cassettes making come up. We're talking about it later on this hour. So let us know what you think. Are you a cassette fan? I remember buying in the 90s, early 90s, when I went to university, buying cassette singles because I thought that was a really cool thing.
Oh, OK, yeah.
So, but that was a waste of plastic, really, wasn't it?
My only memory of a cassette is having to use a pen to wind it all back in when it comes out. I think that's the only memory I have. It must be a really early childhood memory.
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much indeed. Yeah.
I'm pulling your leg.
I loved them at the time. I remember there's when I got a stereo where if you press the button, it would stop at the next track, which was revolutionary. Right. That was very cool.
But they're not very practical, are they?
Not really.
And in this green agenda world we're living in,
and it's not the best sound. It's not about the best sound quality either.
No.
So I don't know why they're popular. If you love a cassette, let us know why.
Let us know.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Oh, and a quick word on that lovely video. I don't know if we can show it again now, of that child stealing the Princess of Wales's handbag. Have just had a text from Cameron Walker, our royal reporter, who was there on the scene and gave us this inside scoop, which was...
Inside scoop. Brace yourselves.
The child is called Daniel Williams. He's 1 year old. One year old. And apparently it was a very sweet moment.
Oh, there you go.
He was listening to us on the radio, which is very good. Well done, Cameron.
Inside scoop for you.
And there's the inside scoop. He's called Daniel. And Daniel will never forget that moment, will he?
Well, he will.
We talked about... Well, he probably will.
Well, he will. He won't remember that moment, sadly, but he'll be shown it.
And it'll be talked about for years to come. It'll be a story on his wedding day.
Oh, we've got it now. Let's have a look.
We've got this lovely video here.
There you go. Look at him. He's a little cutie.
Daniel, with exceptional taste, steals the mulberry handbag off the Princess of Wales and will not give it back. His mother tries to pry it from his fingers. It won't.
She's mortified. She's absolutely
you would
mortified.
be. You just stole from the heir to the throne.
Well, back to the Princess of
the
Wales.
Queen to be.
Oh, look at her, poor woman.
And then the Princess of Wales, because she's just so amazing, just takes it all in her stride, walks off, leaves the mulberry in the hands of the toddler, and she does get it back later. You'll be glad to know.
There's a bar of gold and a packet of fags in that bag.
I'd love to know, actually.
She's
What was in the
She's
handbag?
a smoker, isn't she? Oh, she was.
Do you think?
Oh, she was, yeah. But
We'll have to ask Cameron.
She might still be. But she... there's probably a bar of gold in there, because you don't carry cash, do they?
No, probably
There'll be
not.
something.
Don't need it, do you?
Gold chips to scatter about in Waitrose.
She does shop in Waitrose, we know that much.
Here you go.
We know
That's
that
not
much.
a guess as much.
Yeah, well, let us know what you think of that lovely video.
It's very cute.
Or anything else that we're talking about today. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Now, the union behind the nurses' strike is now, talk about a U-turn, working with health leaders to provide staff during its own walkout.
Well, this is after hospitals, including Great Ormond Street, issued warnings over patient safety.
Now, the strike, which starts tomorrow evening, was cut in half. It was going to be 48 hours. It's now just 24 after the High Court ruled that the original walkout broke the rules.
Well, our political reporter, Catherine Forster, joins us now in the studio. Good morning to you, Catherine. This is pretty remarkable, isn't it? We're talking about them now providing their own cover for their own strike action.
Yes, it's extraordinary, isn't it? And this strike, which, let's face it, could have been even longer if it hadn't been ruled that half of it was unlawful, is different from the other ones in that previously the nurses did provide exemptions for cancer care, intensive care, really life-threatening conditions. And this strike, they're saying they're not providing that cover. Now, obviously, there's then huge concerns about what this means for patient safety. NHS leaders have said it's going to be exceptionally challenging. So now they're working out locally for particular trusts, for particular hospitals, exemptions, so cover will be provided. Right. But it's quite a patchy picture, and you do wonder how public opinion is going to go.
I was going to say, is this a sign that they are either feeling a push from the public or at least worried about what the public are going to think?
Well, I think, first of all, they're probably genuinely worried about patient safety because it does go against everything they're in, the NHS for, doesn't it? But also, I suspect they will be concerned about public opinion. And also, of course, there's a lot of splits within the RCN itself because now other health unions, UNIS and GMB, have come out to accept the government's offer. And, of course, Pat Cullen of the RCN had recommended to its members that they accepted this offer a few weeks ago, and then the members decided to reject it. So there's a lot of splits and divisions, and you do wonder now there's going to be a vote next week of all the health unions. It seems likely that overall the government's pay deal will be accepted anyway.
So what I was just going to say, because Pat Cullen of the High Court thing the other day, and outside, she didn't go in, but outside the High Court, she was saying this is a disgrace. The government has forced the waste of this public money on a court case, which the RCN's going to have to pay the bill for now. Why did she come out with all of that? Because the judge said, well, this is the RCN's fault. They should have known this was illegal. It should never have got to court.
Yes, the RCN was citing some precedent from a miners' strike, but the High Court was really having none of it. So you do wonder why they went down that avenue, why they timed the strike like they did. Now, of course, they're trying to paint it that the government are, treating nurses as criminals, dragging them through the courts. But the fact is that they didn't have a legal mandate. That legal mandate runs out at midnight on Monday. So it's very interesting. She had previously said, when she recommended the members to take the deal, that, they realised that they'd got as much as they could from the government. And now she's had to do a complete about turn and take a very, very hard line. And you really wonder where public support is going to go. And indeed, if they ballot again for a new mandate, whether they will get that or whether nurses will think, actually, I don't want to go on with this. Will it make them take a harder line, or will it make them decide they've had enough?
Yeah.
It is really interesting to see what happens next in this, and indeed if they will get the mandate, and also the impact of the negotiating power, because as you say, most of the other unions have accepted this deal. They would say it's reasonable, and the RCN have kind of left as the outliner in this dispute.
Yes, they really are. And I mean, the other day we had the midwives and the physiotherapists also accepted the deal. So it does seem increasingly like the nurses are out on their own. And of course, the government is saying, inflation is going to be down by the end of the year. That's what they're hoping, and that will strengthen the government's hand. But of course, prices have already gone up 10%, so it's not like we're all going to be better off. We're just going to be getting less worse off, a bit more slowly.
Yeah. What about is it on Tuesday where the sort of college of NHS college that agrees on monies and things is meeting, where they are likely to sort of implement this 5% plus 6% in a back payment and all the rest of it. Now, the RCN nurses would then get that, even if they're on strike. I mean, again, that takes a bit of wind out the sails, doesn't it?
It does, and it looks likely because, of course, there's the 4 unions and it will be weighted dependent on how many members are in each. Now, given that Unison and GMB, two of the biggest ones, have said they're accepting it, it looks likely it will go through. So the RCN nurses will get that pay rise. And are they going to hold out for another 1 or 2%? Of course, nurses in Scotland got 6.5%. So we will see. We don't have much longer to wait. But obviously, if they do decide they're going to strike again, potentially till Christmas, we're looking at massively longer disruption and a huge worry to patients up and down the country.
Of course. Catherine, thank you so much. Thank you. Michelle's been in touch on email. She says, I'm a nurse myself and I do not agree with the strikes. Extra money in our wage packets will not make our job easier. We have the same issues every day, all due to a lack of nurses. Our wards are struggling. We do not have enough staff on shift and patient care is affected because of a lack of nurses, not because of a lack of money. The government needs to change the rules on student nurse training. We need to go back to basics and stop with student fees. Anyone who wants to become a nurse should not have to pay for a degree.
I think that's not a bad idea. Heather says the nurses are not only fighting the government, but also the media. As the media consistently says, public sympathy is waning. But that is not necessarily the case. It's not the nurses' fault the waiting lists are long. That lies on government mismanagement. Did you do Joe in Essex? No, you didn't do it. But Joe in Essex spent all my working life as a nurse, very disappointed with the action of nurses now. I joined the RCN in the 80s. Oh, this is interesting. Joined the RCN in the 80s because it had a no-strike clause. Oh, that's interesting that they changed that. Such a shame this has changed. Nurses have always been underpaid, and I did many years where we had no pay rises at all. And whilst it doesn't make it all right, neither does putting vulnerable people at risk through strike action. That's a really interesting point, Joe.
Yeah, and Wendy is one of those people who says she's been put at risk through strike action. She says, as a pensioner suffering greatly because of the delays in appointments and treatments, my support is completely done with the nurses. They did so much for us during the pandemic and they will again. But the support the nurses get during the profession is abysmal. That's a good point, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting. Keep your thoughts coming through on that. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Also let us know about cassettes. There's a cassette comeback. Are you a fan of that? We're talking to an expert a little bit later on this hour. Catherine Forster, you are of an age Did you used to buy your album? Well, no.
Yes,
well,
of
come
course
on.
I am of an age.
Did you? I mean, what was the last album you bought on cassette? Do you remember?
Oh my God! Well, do you know? I can't remember because I'm so old that I bought records, LPs, and singles, and can't remember the last. But the first I ever bought was ABBA the album. I'm really showing my age. Cassettes, yeah, I bought a few, but a few of them were recorded possibly illegally.
Oh, I was copying in the double decks.
When you had the
the double decks. I used to like a bit of that. Yeah.
Oh. But they get tangled, cassettes. They're a bit tricky, aren't they?
Yeah.
Get mangled.
I used to get loads. I had Chapow's album on cassette. The one with China in Your Hand. That one, Chapow. Aha, Hunting High and Low.
Yeah.
I had on cassette. Million Love Songs, I had cassette single.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. I used to love them, and they were handy and convenient, but...
Now it's just Spotify, isn't it?
It's, yeah.
That's fine.
£17 a month.
Yeah.
For a family membership.
Oh, is that family? Right.
It's enough, isn't it?
Oh, that says
Thinking
it
about,
all.
do I really want to spend this money every month?
So you're paying for your kids' records, basically? Oh, well,
every parent's...
Oh, you're a very good mum. Very, very good. Well, let us know. Are you going back to vinyl? Or are you going back to cassettes? Apparently, it's what's happening out there. Retro. Let us know. GBNews at gbnews.uk. And if we've got a second, I do just want to say that this gentleman here is nominated for a Trick Award for Best News Presenter. I think we have the website here.
Can I just say I'm very embarrassed?
But he deserves it, and he's brilliant at his job, and I'm sure you all agree he would never, ever blow his own trumpet, but he's incredible, and he really does deserve to win. For Best News Presenter, so it's the Trick Awards. I think it's trick.org.uk/public poll. I hope we have the strap and you can see it for yourselves. We don't yet. GB News Breakfast is also up for an award for Best Multi-Platform Channel or something like that. Multi-channel platform. News platform. Anyway, we're there, so make sure you vote for GB News. We'd like you to, anyway. Please.
We would. It'd be very nice if you did.
Please.
And show people that we're making progress, which we are.
Which we are. So Trick Awards
anyway.
in June, and our lovely Stephen is nominated, so please do vote for him.
Why is it? I'll be perfectly honest with you. I mean, it's very nice to be nominated. It really is. It's lovely. I am so embarrassed.
Why are you so embarrassed?
So embarrassed.
No.
I don't know. I just...
Look, you're very experienced. You've been doing this a little while, is what I'm saying.
I've been doing it 30 years. It's about time I got something.
It's about time you are recognised for something you're very, very good at, my darling. So, yes, Trick Awards, and it's spelt TRIC. They're writing trick out there like a...
Yeah.
Like a trick.
Don't know what
like a magic trick.
For.
No, trick.
There you go. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. That's very good. Thank you.
Yeah. There are lots of other stories going on today. We'll bring you up to speed. Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, will lead a day of campaigning in Dundee today to mark a month since becoming SNP leader. What a month it's been. Mr Yousaf has had a tumultuous start to his time in charge, with the arrest of the former Chief Executive Peter Morrell, who's been investigated over party finances. However, ahead of his visit today, he assured his supporters that his party membership is on the rise and support for independence remains strong.
The Crimean city of Sevastopol has been hit in an alleged drone attack. Look at these pictures. If you're on the radio, you see plumes of smoke, very, very black smoke, like you wouldn't believe. It's the largest on the Crimean Peninsula, which, of course, Russia annexed from Ukraine in 2014. It's come under repeated air attacks since Russia sent troops into Ukraine last February. Russian officials are blaming Ukraine for this attack.
The Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end today. Oliver Dowden says the decision was made after a decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, British forces have rescued more than 1,500 people.
Weirdly, loads of views on that story we did in the paper about Cleopatra. She's been played in a new Netflix drama by a black actress. The Egyptian authorities have come out and said, well, she had white skin. Well, not black skin, put it that way. She's sort of, I don't know how you describe
Middle
it.
Eastern,
maybe? Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Barry has been in touch saying she was Macedonian, descended from the Ptolemy, Alexander the Great's general. They kept the blood lineage true, hence she looked Greek.
Yeah, Patricia says Cleopatra was from Greece. Marilyn said she was of Greek descent. Her name is Greek. Seems that the colour of one's skin matters intensely when you want to change history for money. says Marilyn.
Mel says she wasn't Caucasian, she wasn't black African either, she was Mediterranean brown, Egyptian North African.
Well, you're all very knowledgeable.
You are very knowledgeable.
Keith says the same as Barry, from the same dynasty. Say it
I don't
again.
know.
You're embarrassing us now.
Ptolemy.
Ptolemy.
I don't know, I'm not that educated.
Oh, one of Alexander the Great's generals. Yeah, same as what Barry said. Yeah.
James says, and I don't know if this takes it a bit too far, but I mean, maybe after seeing the article about Cleopatra, I just wondered, would you have a black actor playing Winston Churchill or a white actor playing Nelson Mandela? No, well, no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. I suppose the question around Cleopatra is, we don't actually know the colour of her skin. Do we? I mean, she might have been a very dark Greek or a very pale Greek or I don't know. But does it really matter in terms of when you're looking at like an ancient historical figure like that?
Let us know.
I don't know. I mean, I certainly see the point. No, you wouldn't have a white actor playing Mandela. No, I mean, obviously that'd be totally wrong. Yeah. That is recent history, and the colour of his skin, obviously, was absolutely crucial to who he was and to his story. And what he was, you know, that's a fundamental part of it, isn't it? Whereas was Cleopatra's colour important to what she did? I don't know. I don't know enough about her.
Well,
to be fair,
you certainly do at home.
You too.
Keep
Very
your views
knowledgeable.
coming in. I love it when we just strike gold and it's like, oh, the real flurry of emails. gbviews@gbnews.uk. A few views on the Labour interview that we just did. Bridget Phillipson talking about what she'd do to bring more teachers into the profession, specialised teachers for specialised subjects. Les says, my history teacher was the PE teacher back in the early 70s.
Oh.
And Felicity says, tell Bridget Phillipson that people like me, military families, also use private schools. So if Labour do this, and by that she means they're going to stop the tax breaks for private schools, get them to pay more, and then use that money to get more state school teachers.
So you'd have to pay more to send your child there.
Yeah, a lot more, yeah. They said they're jeopardising the education of military children that they can't have in normal state schools.
Yeah, Baz says, another Labour... Now, this is a fair point, to be fair. Another Labour MP on your show who won't commit to paying teachers more, yet says the government have failed by not giving teachers a pay rise.
Yeah, she wouldn't be drawn on a pay rise, would
But
she?
Paul said, as with any Labour politician, when asked a straightforward question, they just avoid answering. Nothing has changed. Well, that is true, Paul, but it also applies to politicians of all parties, let me tell you.
Richard says, I've just listened...
To be fair, it's all of them. It's all of them. You very rarely get an answer.
Yeah, that's true. Richard said, I've just listened to the Shadow Education Secretary state that Labour would remove the tax breaks on private schools and spend that money, £1.3 billion, on more specialist teachers. Sounds great, but £1.3 billion represents 1% of the total annual education budget. Where's the rest of the money coming from?
Oh, well.
Says Richard.
Yeah. Now, you raise lots of valid points on that.
Keep them coming. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And I believe we have that website for the Trick Awards, by the way, which we're going to get up for you. There you go, trick.org.uk. I had it right.
Public-poll.
There you go. /public-poll. There you go. That's where you're going to vote for Stephen for Best News Presenter and GB News Breakfast for Best Multi-Platform Channel.
You are turning more and more into Edna Everage. I think she's entered your body.
Do you think? She's been reincarnated.
Yeah, I think so, into you.
Anyway.
It's lovely.
I'm just your biggest fan. I want you to do well. And he won't blow his own trumpet, so I have to do it for him.
Oh, no, it's very kind.
Anyway.
Anyway, should we go away?
Let's go away for the bank holiday weekend.
Yes.
But the RAC is predicting it is the biggest getaway on the road since 2016, but it could be not smooth sailing.
No, it's not going to be smooth sailing at all. Avoid the boats. Drivers and train passengers are being warned to face congestion and disruption over the holiday. Motoring organisations forecasting the biggest travel movement for 7 years.
Sounds busy, doesn't it? Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis joins us from above the M1 in Nottingham. Good morning to you, Will. Just how busy are you expecting it to be?
Good morning. Yes, well, as pieces of British identity go, you've got Buckingham Palace, Stonehenge, and then my personal favourite, the M1 running right the way through the middle of the country. This is where we are in Nottinghamshire, just above the M1, where it's really quite noisy, but traffic seems to be moving quite freely. The RAC is warning, though, if you are planning on getting out on the roads this bank holiday or next, to expect double dosing of traffic trouble, because this is a very special thing where we've got the King's Coronation, so we've got a spare bank holiday. So people that might be looking to go to the seaside or go to a city break, they've got two options to do it for this period here in May. This one is going to be a little bit busier. The early May bank holiday, 17.2 million leisure journeys are expected to be made over this bank holiday. Next weekend, though, 14 million journeys still to be made. Slightly fewer, though, because most people are going to be at home, hopefully watching GB News, watching the telly on much bigger television screens than we saw when it was the Queen's coronation in 1953. But I'm sure lots of people will still be squidging into living rooms instead of being out on the roads. The idea, though, is to get out as early as you can. The advice as well from the RAC is to make sure that you're well prepared to go on these journeys if you are getting out this weekend or next. We've got a statement from the RAC Breakdowns spokesman, Rod Dennis. He said, while we'd expect more short breaks and day trips to the coast this coming weekend, when it comes to the coronation, it's likely major routes are less likely to be congested. The big variable, as always, is what happens with the Great British weather. It's quite nice where we are in Nottinghamshire. I think the average is going to be about 21 degrees, so maybe even more people than that 17.2 million are going to choose to throw their stuff in the car and get out here. But it isn't just the roads. There's going to be busier airports because it is a bank holiday. The big one, though, is, of course, for the railways. Network Rail, whenever there's a bank holiday, they put on a load of planned maintenance, 600 individual cases of planned maintenance. No matter where you go on the railways, you're going to find that there's going to be some sort of changes and delays because of that. The big one that they're warning about is London Euston Station, because that's going to be closed on Sunday. So we are quite used to it. We do understand that bank holidays, you're going to have a busier road and that you're going to be advised to get out early, to check your tyres and all of that kind of stuff. But as the scouts say, as the Boy Cat scouts say, and as my father still says to me today, always be prepared no matter what you do, whether it's a journey on the bank holiday or anything else that you do in this life.
Very wise man, your father. I've always said that, Will. Thanks very much indeed. I feel a bit sorry for Will.
Why?
I'm perfectly honest, because it's not the first time we've sent you out above the M1 when the traffic's been very busy, and it's always moving really well behind him whenever we send him out.
I know, but he does such a wonderful job, does our Will.
But it's sod's law.
Yeah.
It will get busier later.
It will.
Unfortunately. Yeah. I think you must get a bit of vertigo standing on those bridges.
Oh, I don't like it. I've been sent before. Horrible.
Give me the willies, I think.
Yeah, oh. The heebie-jeebies, how we like to put it. Right, sport, even more sport. Everything you need to know about sport with Aidan McGee. That's coming up next. This is GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories. Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What's up with you now?
I need a tea.
A tea? She's thrown a pen across her. It's very unprofessional.
Need a tea.
I don't know what's going on. She's got out a dry cleaning chitty here. What's that?
It's reminded me to pick it up
two dresses,
later.
one jumper. What's going on?
My work dresses.
Well,
I'm running out. I'm always
would you,
here.
Would you
with
focus?
You all right? Yeah.
This is Breakfast with
We
Stephen
did just
and
have a
Ellie.
break,
Good morning.
can I just say?
We have just been a break. We bumped into Esther
And Phil.
and Phil.
In their pink.
But Esther's wearing exactly the same colour dress as you.
Yeah.
As she was the other week. Was it last week?
We're in sync, Esther and I. Esther and Ellie. We've got something going on.
Could be a new show there.
Could be a new... Oh, look, you're under threat.
I was thinking about Phil, really, to be honest. Anyway, Aidan McGee's here with the Sport. Morning to you.
Good to see you. How you doing?
Hello.
Yes, all right. You're here. Viewers demanding you back on.
Yeah, listen, self-praise is no recommendation, which is why I'm delighted that Paula from Nottingham came through and said she likes it when I do the Sport Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh,
it's the chemistry that we exude between us.
Oh, it is. It is.
It's a team effort.
It is. It's always a team effort.
Before we get into the sport, can I ask you about the barbecue story that we've been talking about today?
Yeah.
50% of women say they barbecue better than men. What do you think about
I've never put a woman on the barbecue.
Never put a woman on the barbecue?
No, as in on the... Is that what you mean? The women barbecue better than men?
Yeah.
I mean, do the... Right, I see what you mean. Yeah, sorry. So I was being facetious. No, let me say, my brother did a good barbecue, actually. It's the only time I saw him cook in the year. He treats it as, like, DJ decks.
Yeah, yeah.
And he put the music on, he put a silly hat on, an apron, and he did charge us to get into his barbecue a couple of times, which was another story.
He didn't.
He did. You either pay £5 or you bought your own meat. Yeah. So anyway,
right, devil.
It is a little bit. Yeah, it is. It's tight as 2 coats of paint, in fact. So. No, it doesn't really. It doesn't really matter to me who does the barbecue.
But don't you want to be in charge? Don't you want to be in charge?
No, not if you're a control freak. Yeah, I imagine you would. But I'm not like that.
But you'd be happy for a woman to do the barbecue?
Oh, without doubt. Yeah. I mean, we just want to sit down, have a drink, and watch the FA Cup final, don't you?
Well, then that's the woman doing all the work round you.
So yeah,
no,
not really, because I still have to. Whenever the football match on, I'm expected. It's incumbent on me to provide a degree of analysis as well. So
I see.
It's not a day off.
I see. Oh, right, OK.
Which is a bit rough, considering I might have paid to get into this barbecue and I don't even get to relax.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Well, lots of people do relax by watching the footy. So I don't know how I'm going to link this to the Man U takeover, but I'll let you do that.
Well, there's no one relaxing at the moment. I mean,
there you go, very good.
Yeah, we are exactly. The third round of bids. Of course, the club was part of a sale by the Glazers back in November 2022. The reason for that, probably the cost of... Well, they were piqued by what Chelsea sold for, which was £2.5 billion. They thought, well, there's every chance United could go for twice of that, given the size of the club. And the cost of borrowing has just gone up exponentially in the last year or so, and it's become a lot more expensive to keep Man United running from week to week. So we saw the third round of bidding last night. Only really 2 parties in town, 2 shows in town, really. Sheikh Jassim from the Qatari bid. He's made a bid of £5 billion. Just to put it in context, Man United almost sold for £5 million in 1989 when Michael Knighton from Carlisle, or from Cumbria, actually tried to get the club. So £5 billion up front is what the Qataris have bid. A further billion would go towards clearing the debt. Another billion would go towards player investment. And probably another billion on top of that going towards replacing Old Trafford or certainly upgrading it. If you look at what Tottenham cost 3-4 years ago, yes, London Land is a bit more expensive, but the kind of facility United would be looking for, it would want to be one of the finest in the world. It would cost, and upgrading the training ground.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, in terms of that, you've got the real estate of Old Trafford. I mean, that's worth a fortune, isn't it? That'd sell for a lot of money.
Not necessarily.
To a developer,
maybe it depends what you want to do with it. But I wouldn't say. I know Manchester well. Lived there for many years. I wouldn't say it was the most expensive land in the city. No.
No, you'd probably get $1 billion for it, wouldn't you?
Not the land. No, not the land. No, not at all. Not at all. You get a couple hundred million, but it's.
Oh, is that all?
But it's no. But I think they would be looking in terms of what they want to do. They'd probably be looking to build on the existing footprint. The problem there's one stand which is not the same size as the rest of them because of the train track that runs underneath it. So there needs to be a deal done with the local authority. But if they can get around that, then who knows? But it's an expensive undertaking. Any new bidder or any new owner has to consider that because it does need upgrading if they're going to keep pace with the best sides. And if this club does go for a deal worth around, I mean, the Glazers want $6 billion. So this is a final offer from the Qataris, by the way.
4.8.
No, 4.8.
Oh, no, 4.8 is the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, if that goes through, that's the biggest. But if the biggest deal for a franchise, but United would eclipse that. And that's no surprise to me. United, I covered that club for a couple of years, went all around the world with them. It is an absolutely enormous football club. Bigger than Arsenal, bigger than Chelsea, bigger than Liverpool, no question about it. I'm not speaking as a fan, because I don't support them.
No, you don't. QPR all the way for
absolutely,
you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then this other bid, the Sir James Radcliffe bid. Ineos, local guy, comes from Failsworth in Manchester. Grew up on a council estate, boyhood United fan. Did try to buy Chelsea, or was interested in Chelsea last year, it should be said. But his deal would see an ownership structure where they would have overall control, probably 51%, but they would keep the Glazers in there at 20%, and the remaining 30% would be on the New York Stock Exchange and be trading as normal. Yeah. So what's not clear at the moment is how much they value their 51% stake at. But as I say, 2 bids in town, and we think we'll probably see some clarity by middle of next week.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And what do the fans want?
I think they want the Qatari bid because that's the one that enables them to go into the transfer market spending. You would be able to, in terms of financial fair play, you would be able to go and lavish money on players at United quite quickly because FFP, financial fair play, is based on you can't spend more than you generate, but United generate an absolute fortune, Ellie. And yes, OK, there are debts there, but they would wipe out the debt straight away. So you would, in theory, be able to start spending. And they're in the top 4 already. Would it need loads of players to get them right to the top of the league? Maybe 3 or 4? You don't need a whole team, I don't think. You certainly don't need a whole squad.
No. Talking of massive teams, Wrexham.
Yes.
Wrexham, what's going on?
Well, they got into the Football League last week, didn't they?
Yes.
Of course, they're Hollywood-owned by Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds.
What did they pay? $2.5 million? Something like that?
I don't think it was even as much as that. I mean, the club was debt-ridden. It hadn't had any investment for years. It hadn't even played in the Football League since 2008. But they got promoted last week. Now, they've seen an opportunity to try and entice Gareth Bale out of retirement. Very much a South Wales guy. They'd have to tempt him to go to North Wales. And they want one more season out of him if they can possibly get him to do that. He announced his retirement in January. He's a massive golf fan. Very interesting.
He wants to be a golfer, doesn't he?
Yeah, he could. There have been players who weren't that far off making the cut, actually, down the years, if you pardon the pun. But Rob McElhenney said yesterday, Gareth Bale, let's play golf, where I totally won't spend 4 hours trying to convince you to unretire for one last magical season. And then Ryan Reynolds weighed in and said, I will shave a professional-grade golf course into Rob's back if you will give Wrexham a season. And they posted a picture of Gareth Bale, a mocked-up picture of Gareth Bale in a Wrexham kit. But Gareth Bale has since said he was at an event last night and he said it's not for him in his time of his life. Given that he's been making sacrifices for football in the last 15 years.
Oh, sacrifices, has he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely right. I first saw him play at Southend United. I mean, that's a sacrifice, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but how many hundreds of thousands of pounds a week did he make?
Yeah, it was a lot, but he was a top player.
Yeah,
supply and demand.
It's not about sacrifices, though.
Well, no, but OK, but what about his family? They don't see him as much. No. And he's enjoying spending the time with his family.
Yes, that's
and he's relatively young. He's 33.
Yeah, but he's still young. You think you want to be part of this story because it's a great story.
Mate, yeah, it is.
He'd have to take a big pay cut, though, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I
You
don't
get £1,000 a week.
He was getting £500,000 a week at Real Madrid, so I think he's all right. It'll keep him in. He'll still be able to have prawns on a Friday night, I'm sure.
I'd work for £500,000 a week, would you?
Yeah, I would.
Would you? Yeah.
Well, I do.
Well, yeah, but a lot less, yeah. What's going on at the Crucible?
Crucible, well...
It was like 2 semi-finals last night.
Yeah, one was really interesting. You got a big story. The Chinese lad...
one really exciting. The other dull.
I looked it up. I was right about Stephen Hendry did win the world title at 21. 21 years and 180 days.
Right.
So this lad, Zhi Juwei, is in the semi-final. He's the world number 80. He could become, at 20, the youngest ever world champion, and he's in the ascendancy at the moment. 14-10, he's leading against the Belgian Luca Bretzel. He's no mug himself. He put out Ronnie O'Sullivan in the quarter-final. But in the other one, it's 7-6 to Mark Selby, who's the 4-time champion. His last title was in 2021. But it became so tactical that they had to withdraw both players earlier than normal last night, about 6 o'clock, 3 frames early, because it was just getting so dull. Well, not getting so dull. There wasn't a time to play the extra frames, and the fans felt that it could have gone on until 7 o'clock. But Stephen Hendry described the whole thing as a dark cloud over Sheffield. Yeah. It's not the kind of snooker he wants to play. But, you know, listen, he's an experienced guy himself. He knows that some matches are just tactical.
Yeah.
And they go on for a little bit too long, and hopefully if you get Selby against Zhi Juwei again in the final, then maybe we might get a blockbusting final. You never know.
Well,
and we might be talking about something other than just stop oil at the snooker.
Well, that would be nice.
It would.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
It would.
Aidan, thanks very much indeed.
See you soon. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
Now, Eurovision is just 2 weeks away in Liverpool. We're going to take you behind the scenes. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
9:42.
Yeah.
Good morning, not
Later
9:24.
than you think, darling.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It's flown by this morning, though. That's the thing. That's the reality.
Because you're having a lovely time.
We're going to run through loads of your views on cassettes in just a minute. So if you've emailed in, don't go anywhere because you could get your views read out. Great views, love it.
But if you are planning on going somewhere on your bank holiday weekend, you might want to check before you travel because your train may be cancelled. Just a few days earlier, the RMT and the Train Drivers Union ASLEF said there will be more rail strikes for next month and for June as well.
Oh, yeah, happy days. Earlier we spoke to travel correspondent for The Independent, Simon Calder.
The RMT, General Secretary Mick Lynch, he says that the train operators, and we're talking here about 14 companies, all of which are contracted by the government to provide train services. So forget franchising, all that stuff. Effectively, we've got a nationalised rail system with outsourcing. And the government is kind of behind the train operators' negotiations because ultimately whatever settlement it is coming out of your taxes and mine to pay for this because the finances are a right old muddle. The government is saying you've got to improve productivity because otherwise we can't afford to do this. And the rail unions are sort of saying, well, no, we've worked through COVID, we want to have a pay rise without any strings attached. And we think, and therefore the deal that we thought we'd done, you've changed it at the last minute. The train operators say, no, we haven't. Over at ASLEF, Mick Whelan, Train Drivers Union, they say, we just want more money, basically. Oh, and by the way, you can't attach strings to that. So effectively, we are pretty much where we were a year ago before we went into the first set of national strikes since the 1980s. And for us train travellers, I don't have a car, millions of people out there don't have a car, your train ticket is still a lottery ticket. You cannot plan more than 2 weeks ahead because that's the minimum length of time that the unions must say they're going on strike. So it's an absolute mess. This weekend is going to be pretty grim if you're trying to use the West Coast Main Line, particularly tomorrow. Frankly, I wouldn't bother. If you're going to beautiful Blackpool, then it looks like the bus or the car. And next weekend, everything is going to be working normally, sometimes better than normally, with extra trains being put on, for instance, early in the morning from Cardiff to London Paddington. And the only kind of major engineering work is closing one half of Victoria Station, which affects the main line to Gatwick and Brighton. But there's another way you can go to London Bridge. So it will be fine. We just don't know how the transport system in London will stand up to it because we haven't had a coronation for quite a long time.
And as if by magic, we're there and we're here.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't expecting that just yet.
No.
I was just reading a view from Kathleen, who says, "Morning to you both. I'm not feeling too good today. I hope you pick up, Kathleen. But you pair always cheer me up. You are obviously so fond of each other. It's a joy to watch. You're like fish and chips, warm and comforting. Don't change." This woman drives me mad, Kathleen. She drives me up the wall.
Hates every
you
second.
have no idea. It's a chore sitting next to her. Isn't it? It's an ordeal. You won't believe what goes on.
You wouldn't, actually. You wouldn't.
No, she demands tea. I've got to pick up a dry clean. I had to take her into town yesterday on the tube.
Yeah, we did. We did our first recce together, didn't we?
We did. We went down to Buckingham Palace.
Went down to Buckingham Palace, checked it all out. Looks great, by the way.
Still there.
It's still there, looking good. Watch us next Saturday for the coronation, please, because it looks very nice. Lots of you voting for Stephen in the Trick Awards. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Jill
very much.
voted
Very
for you.
kind.
Great programme, very professional. Sue watched you for years. Good luck. Richard says good luck. My mum's texted and said she's voted for you.
Thanks, Mum.
Margaret says, I watch GB News every day.
I haven't
Stephen's
told my
funny.
I haven't told my mother that I'm nominated yet.
Well, you need to tell her that. You need to tell her to vote. And this is the website, by the way, trick.org.uk/public-poll.
Yeah, Margaret. I mean, I've got to say, Margaret, though. I watch GB News every day, and when Stephen is on, he reminds me so much of Alan Partridge. He is so funny. Thank you, Margaret.
Oh, dear.
Thank you for that.
And Sean says, don't worry, Stephen, we voted for you and for GB News because breakfast is also up for an award, so do give us a vote for that as well.
Yes.
You well proved your modest worth, lad, since coming from your previous employer.
Oh, yes. Well, you know.
Well, that's very nice.
Onwards and upwards.
So thank you
That's why
for...
I'm not happier.
Yeah. You are very happy.
Oh, yeah, much
very
happier.
happy.
Much
So
happier.
do keep those votes coming in for Stephen. He's very deserving of them.
Yes, all right. Yes, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's very kind. Now, with just 2 weeks to go until Eurovision, have you got an outfit ready yet?
No. Have you?
No. I don't want a special outfit, but you, I can imagine spangles, ABBA...
Yeah.
You know.
I'm still working on the Coronation outfits. These things
that's
take
true.
time.
I've sorted that one out. Anyway, preparations in Liverpool are well underway.
Well, earlier this week, the King and the Queen visited the competition venue, but meanwhile, the Scouse songstress Sonia, that's difficult to say on Portuguese.
We've got now our very own Scouser, Zach, here.
Yeah.
Didn't know who Sonia was.
You know, he wasn't born, to be fair.
No, but it's Sonia.
Yeah, all right.
Better the devil. Yeah.
Zach wasn't
Brilliant.
born until 98, so we're talking about
1993, yes.
Well, Sonia, our very own Sonia, teamed up with a very special choir to really get the party started.
Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has the story.
Live from Liverpool. In just 2 weeks' time, Eurovision will be bursting onto our screens. In 1993, the city's born and raised Sonia took to the stage as the UK's entry. Now, 30 years later, Eurovision is coming to her.
I know you're originally from Liverpool. What does it mean to you to have Eurovision in your home city?
Wow, I'm just so proud. When we found out that we got it here, I was just ecstatic. As I say, I'm just unbelievably proud. It's going to be the best time ever.
This week, Sonia joined forces with a choir made up of refugees in order to mark a very special edition of Eurovision.
No matter if people are singing in English or a different language, music connects people together. And I just think it's going to be a really a celebration of everybody coming together and through music, you know.
United by music. That's the tagline of this year's Eurovision Song Contest, as it's hosted by the United Kingdom on behalf of last year's winners, Ukraine. Now, this choir features several Ukrainian refugees. They may have been forced to flee the conflict in their homeland, but they still have a message of hope that they want to spread.
Choir soloist Tatiana was a vocal coach back in Ukraine, but when her town was hit by Russian rockets, she was forced to flee.
I was very afraid. I have 2 children, and my reaction was to run. I'm really happy that we did such a choice, because for this moment, it's almost a year. I'm in UK. Everything's perfect in my case, in my family, so yeah.
Since arriving in the UK, music has helped Tatiana restore some normality back into her life.
Not a lot of music was in my life this year, but I hope, and now I have inspiration to improve this. You see, universe shows me that if I'm here and if I'm singing, it's what I need to do. It's for me.
Funded by the National Lottery, the choir first started back in 2018. It brings together young refugees and asylum seekers from all over the UK.
I think music is a great healer. I think it's a great leveller, and most of all, it's a great communication tool. You know, whether they're from Ukraine or whether they're from Sudan or whether they're from Afghanistan, you can use music to communicate.
And that's what this year's Eurovision is all about. Bringing people together through music. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Now, the reality is I probably bought Sonia's 1993 Bet the Devil You Know for Eurovision on cassette single, I would imagine. And I'm not the only one. Heck, hundreds of you. Barbara says, my husband Sydney has about 200 cassette tapes. Sheila's back in fashion again as her Corsa, which is 24 years old this year, has an original cassette player installed as standard. She uses it every day.
Brian says cassettes were good at the time, but the sound quality was very poor. They had a large amount of hiss which accompanied the sound.
Yeah, well, true.
Few cars now have a cassette player. So how would those who bought cassettes play them in a car? It's a very silly idea.
Well, you can probably get retro cassette players for it. Claire said cassettes enabled fans to record mixtapes and bootlegs. That's why the music industry wanted to get rid of them. I had a portable mini-disc recorder. Yes, so did I. They were very, very cool. But there you go.
Ian says, apart from having to wind a cassette tape back in with a pencil, like Ellie said, that's the only memory I have of cassette tapes. The worst thing about them was, as a child, you had to constantly press record and then stop trying to record the top 40 on Radio 1. Then you get really annoyed when the DJ would talk over the intro or the outro.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. Talk about going even more retro, though, if you're a certain age, which is even beyond me. Andrew says, cassettes are far too modern for me. I'm waiting for the return of the 8-track, preferably the Q8 quad tracks. I still have my recorder player from 1975. Yeah, I don't even remember 8-track. There you go. And it's all about recording the top 40. Rob says the real benefits of cassettes was the ability to record the top 40, the Friday Rock Show, and radio plays like Lord of the Rings and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Bit of nostalgia for us here this morning.
Thanks for your company. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Esther and Phil are here with Saturday Morning in just a second.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's Aidan McGibbon here with the latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Bank holiday weekend is here, and lo and behold, it's turning warmer and brighter for many of us, but not for all. Still some cold weather about first thing for Scotland and for the far north of England. A lot of cloud here as well, with an occluded front lingering. Elsewhere, yes, cloudy skies, but a milder start to the day for southern and western parts of the country. A lot of mist and murk covering some western coasts, and some outbreaks of rain across western parts of the UK as well, first thing. Now, as temperatures rise, the cloud will bubble up. We'll see some brighter spells developing in the south and the west, but also, as temperatures rise, we'll see showers developing. Northern Ireland, parts of Wales into the West Midlands, greatest risk for some slow-moving thunderstorms, and some hail could cause some problems into the afternoon. But away from the showers, actually feeling pleasantly warm in the south, 18 to 21 Celsius, whilst Scotland and the north of England, well, here we're just going to see 8 to 12 Celsius and a lot of cloud cover. Fairly extensive clouds then